I cannot believe that I spelled Kaidan's name wrong in the first video. Well, why didn't you warn me, Stefan Atkinson 8702? I have brought great shame to myself, and I hope you can all forgive me my trespasses as I talk instead today about Mass Effect 2, released on the 26th of January 2010, about 2.5 years after the first game and only 3 months after BioWare's previous game, Dragon Age Origins. Mass Effect 2 posits itself a direct sequel to its predecessor, and as such begins just as Mass Effect 1 ended, with Commander Shepard dying. Wait, no, that's not what happened. Mass Effect 2 begins just as Mass Effect 1 ended, with Commander Shepard and the Normandy flying off into space to garner information about the Reapers and prepare for their future arrival. Technically speaking, this is a short while after the end of the first game, as all of the companions made along the way, Garrus, Wrex, Tali, Liara, they've pretty much all left the Normandy to pursue their own goals and aspirations. We'll make sure to circle back to those guys later, but for now just focus on Shepard hanging out with Joker and my sweet summer child Presley on board the Normandy, when suddenly, despite all of Joker's piloting prowess, an evacuation is called and all crew are sent into the escape pods. Shepard pretty much physically drags Joker through absolute agony to his escape. Shepard, however, isn't so lucky, and as the Normandy sustains its final bit of damage and plummets to the surface of an icy planet, her body remains floating lifelessly in space. After a series of intense nightmares and visions, she awakes, alive and well, in a secure laboratory nowhere near where the Normandy was taken down. This is Mass Effect 2. While Shepard was legally and physically deceased, things in the galaxy have changed a little bit here and there. That means it seems an appropriate time to have a mini lore segment. First things first, while we're still in the human year 2183 AD, a few things happen but are largely inconsequential. Human biotics improve immensely, the Quarians are attacked by Cerberus, and Liara has a run-in with the Shadow Broker. Now on to the human year 2184 AD, where a mysterious Andromeda initiative is started. I don't intend to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda for a while, as I don't personally believe it to be on the same echelon as the main trilogy. I may come back and revisit it one day, but after Mass Effect 3 coming soon, I'm gonna move on to a different series, but I'm not gonna deny that the Andromeda stuff happens, and this is when it first properly starts. They send out a series of convincing advertisements to get people to come over to their gigantic starliners and get people to explore and settle the Andromeda galaxy. The whole thing is quite fantastical, and we're not going to talk about it right now. If and or when I talk about Andromeda one day, we will go into detail about the Andromeda initiative, but it does not pertain to this game or the third game at all. I just want to make a mention of it. Other than this, a couple of newcomers show up to the galaxy. First of all, we have the Ralloi, who similarly are pretty much unimportant to talk about. You may have noticed that I didn't use any clips or images to describe the Ralloi, and that's because they don't appear at all in this game or indeed any future game. And while reasons are given in Mass Effect 3 as to why this might be, this second game doesn't have any specific reason not to show the Ralloi other than they just aren't super important to anything to do with the plot, and there's not much point spending all that much time on them, so, well, I shan't either. There is additionally the Vorcha. A relatively innocent Alliance freighter is travelling across the galaxy when they're suddenly attacked by an infamous Krogan mercenary group. These mercenaries, however, are not alone, and they utilise a little-known, savage, tribal race that the Krogans have decided to uplift from their primitive lives into a full-fledged space-faring species of almost sort of parasitic animalistic beastmen. That sounds harsh, and it kinda is in a way, but that's how a lot of people in the galaxy see them, and in fairness it is how they tend to portray themselves. But they are, in a lot of ways, still just people. And yeah, that's kinda it. New biotic implants give clairvoyant joy, our cloistered boys avoid turmoil, become paranoid, a convoy is employed to voyage the void, the Ralloi join the hoi polloi and enjoy joining as a Citadel envoy, while the Vorcha are foisted to poison and destroy with pure maladroit. Throughout it all, Shepard was devoid. But now she awakens as an android.
Wake up, Commander.
Yeah, I've spent enough time dilly-dallying and making fun wordplay, so let's talk about the fact that this game literally starts off with our main character dying. I think the intention is that this serves a few functions for both the story and the gameplay. In terms of story, it's a very simple way of providing us a logical reason for the time skip, as well as giving a great opportunity and reason for us to be indebted to a different faction that we'll talk about in a hot sec. As for gameplay, well, this gives us an opportunity to re-roll our Shepard if we want. The idea being, oh well, full recreation of an actual human being is hard, so, well, a few things are different. You played as a soldier specialization in the first game but want to try out biotics this time around? Go right ahead, buddy. I'm happy with my sentinel specialization that Commander Shepard was given in the first game, so I intend to stick with it, but regardless of this, the rebirth does do away with all the leveling and progression done in the first game. It's actually partly why my first video avoided talking too much about leveling, since it's both pretty simplistic and also kinda irrelevant to spend too much time talking about what I did or didn't pick, when ultimately it only matters for my personal gameplay experience. Other than that, this is the same old Shepard living the same old life, and having now awoken in this mysterious lab, it's time to try and figure out what's going on and begin scheming a way to take out those dastardly scoundrels that killed us in the first place. Fortunately, we are immediately greeted with the sound of a soft-spoken Australian woman's voice over the intercom guiding us on where to go.
Keep moving, we need to get to the shuttles.
Much like how Eden Prime served as a more or less tutorial level for the first game, our escape from this dangerous little science facility serves as our tutorial for the second. The gameplay mechanics have been largely overhauled, but once again I'll talk about them after we've acquainted with a few companions. For now, just know that everything is a lot more refined than the first time, with things all around just feeling a lot better to shoot and an emphasis on cover that makes combat flow extremely smoothly between ducking and weaving out of fire and being fired upon. Our guardian angel guides Shepard through the facility where we find out that somebody aboard this space station is trying to kill us again. This is also where we find out for certain that this woman, named Miranda, was part of this team who were established in order to bring Shepard back from the dead, a project that was successful due to the boss providing them with near infinite amounts of money to focus on this project. We fight against all these nameless and faceless mechs until we have a run-in with a gentleman named Jacob Taylor. Meet our first companion. A no-nonsense man who seems to have some understanding of what's going on here and gives us the down-low on where we are and why we are, reconfirming us of the fact that 2 whole years have passed and everyone believes us to be dead. He also gives us a little tip that he's a biotic, which is, as you may recall, always something that can come in useful. So our 2 biotics get to work eliminating some mechs, and Jacob winds down for a more in-depth conversation with us about what exactly is going on. He's the head of security aboard this station, working directly for Miranda, and while he doesn't know much about the specific medical procedures that brought Shepard back to life, he does know that she's not a clone. She's the real deal. He doesn't know why exactly the station is under attack either, so the best bet is that we're going to have to find Miranda and get off this place to figure out our next move. Before we go, he does let us in that all of our friends are alive, except...
Navigator Presley was killed by an explosion.
Why? Why must the beautiful always die young? It's okay, I can continue, I'm strong. He would have wanted me to be strong. As we leave, we are contacted by a chap named Wilson, who seems to be a scientific associate of Miranda. He gives us a route through the station to find a way to the escape shuttles, and following his lead, Shepard and Jacob meet up with this kind chap. Wilson believes that Miranda is a traitor and the direct cause of the mechs turning against us. Jacob disagrees somewhat, but nevertheless the 3 of us need to find a way out of here, and as such trust is paramount, so Jacob reveals to us the identity of our saviours. Remember Cerberus? That small fry human terror organisation with surprisingly large means who killed an Alliance admiral and seemingly had the capability of capturing Rachni, Thorian thralls and had a penchant for killing scientists? Turns out they're excessively wealthy beyond their means, controlled by a gentleman named the Elusive Man, and are, at least according to Jacob, needing of Shepard's skills and expertise to help with yet another galaxy-wide threat to peace. While suspicion is to be expected when dealing with, terrorists, it seems prudent to at least meet the man who brought Shepard back to life, so we press on with our chums until we have a little run-in with Miranda. It seems that Wilson was in fact our traitor, something that Miranda seems pretty certain of, and, with her not wanting to risk her investment in our revival, she made sure he wouldn't be an issue going forwards. Like Jacob, she firmly believes it's about time the Elusive Man had a little chat with us, and so we leave with our 2 new amigos. The calm soldier-type Jacob with his staunch sense of duty, but a seemingly warm conscience for someone who is technically a terrorist, and the much colder and clearly in charge personality that is the tightly dressed Miranda. Miranda gives us a quick checkup to make sure that our cognitive faculties are on the up and up, asking us about our moral choices in the first game. Our time as a spacer kid, our role in the Skillian Blitz as a war hero, and our actions that led to Ashley's death. The original version of Mass Effect 2 uses this part to establish something else, the decision of who you put on the council. You see, interestingly, the original games didn't actually make a save after defeating Sovereign, so the decision regarding whether Anderson or Rudina goes on the council was hilariously not saved. As such, the game had you reconfirm your choices here as part of your evaluation, and if you changed your mind and said the opposite, then that's who would actually be put in charge. It's a kind of funny workaround, but it seems the Legendary Edition forgoes this due to them being on the same download. But it's still a fun little trivia nugget for you. I'll briefly touch up on the fact that this game lets you customize your armor and also lets you wear non-armor items for times when you're in a civilian environment or on your ship. It's a really great little touch that adds a lot of personality to your character by not having to utilize the preset armor options all the time, that end up with my Shepard sometimes walking around in a horrid yellow tracksuit style armor. Now I can freely change the colors and utilize more bulky design options to make Shepard more to my taste, and have her wander around civilian areas in a hoodie or a nice dress. Anyway, the meeting with the Elusive Man is underway, and he is very pleased to see the results of Project Lazarus, the project to revive Shepard, and informs her of exactly what is going on here. The Elusive Man is concerned about the sudden disappearances of several human colonies throughout the past few years, and has reasons to believe that there is a strong connection between this mystery and the Reapers. Cerberus intends to take the battle to who, or what, this new Reaper threat is for the sake of the preservation of humanity. His motives are still a little too not appreciative of alien life for my liking, but if what he says is true and the colonies of people are being wiped out by a Reaper threat, then that means the Reaper threat is getting more and more serious, just as Sovereign warned us. And the Elusive Man needed Shepard because of one simple reason. She knows the Reapers, and how to kill them as she killed Sovereign, so bringing her back was the best way to begin taking the fight to the Reapers. It seems plausible that this man is being unsurprisingly elusive in regards to the information he is willing to give, and that he's probably not the most honest fella going. But nonetheless, he sends us on a shuttle with Miranda and Jacob to investigate a colony that has recently undergone an unwanted exodus by this mysterious threat.
I'm Commander Shepard.
Now I just want to roll things back a wee bit and explain what the heck is going on here. We have a firm grasp of where exactly things are going at the start of Mass Effect 2, but the crux of it lies in that number 2 there. This is the sequel, and so it seems apt that before we get too far ahead, we give a quick refresher on what happened in the first game. I'll keep it brief and succinct, and the game fortunately includes a neat little comic entitled Genesis that gives you the ability to quickly recap the first game and the choices made, so I'll basically just run through that. This comic actually shows up before the meeting with the Elusive Man, but for the sake of the video pacing, I think it's a bit better to do it here. So without further ado, Mass Effect starred Commander Shepard, in my case Commander Shepard, on a trial run with her two amigos Kaidan and Ashley to become humanity's first Spectre. Think of it like being James Bond but not the James Bond film Spectre, as this game preceded Spectre by 8 years, and this trial run went horribly wrong via the interference of a Turian named Saren. Shepard interfaced with a mysterious beacon and was given visions of an impending doomsday before being rushed to the Citadel to explain the events of her mission to the Council, the governing body of the galaxy headed by the Asari, Solarian and Turian governments. In addition, the Citadel is home to humans and a few other species in the galaxy, Volus, Elcor and Hanar. After wrangling some support from a few new friends named Garrus, Tali and Wrex, they were able to present compelling evidence of Saren's traitorous actions to the Council, and Shepard was named humanity's first Spectre. The squad left the Citadel and went to recruit someone closely linked to Saren's right-hand woman, an Asari scientist named Liara. With the Avengers now assembled, the team went off to investigate the whereabouts of this right-hand woman named Benezia, and found her on a cold and desolate planet. After encountering the second coming of a long-extinct race called the Vakani, Benezia was defeated and the gang went off to a little asteroid. On this asteroid they had a run-in with a race of people called the Batarians, who don't like humanity. The baddies were scared off and we paid a visit to a planet called Ferros, which is under attack from Saren's buddies, the Geth, a race of robots created by a species called the Quarians, of which Tali is one. With Ferros saved from the Geth and also this weird planty boy called the Thorian, the gang set off to a planet called Vermire to take the fight to Saren. Saren had been cloning Krogan babies and working with an evil, ancient, genocidal robotic species called the Reapers, and so Shepard blew up his base with Ashley dying in the process. Shepard chased Saren to a planet called Ilos and then back to the Citadel where she saved the Council, killed Saren and Sovereign and witnessed the first human council to get appointed, her mentor Captain Anderson, and then she died and her ship was destroyed.
You always have a choice, Shepard.
Back now in the present, Shepard has lost contact with her old friends and she is once again the only one capable of finding the truth about the Reapers. The colony of Freedom's Progress is the latest to succumb to these mysterious circumstances, and the Elusive Man believes that, with Miranda and Jacob's help, Shepard will be able to find something, anything, to begin a thorough investigation to the disappearances and hopefully find more concrete evidence of his theory that this is related to the Reapers. As we touch down, it's evident that he, at the very least, wasn't lying about the colony just disappearing. It's a ghost town, it's eerie, silent. Not a soul seems to be about, and there seems to be a distinct lack of evidence of any struggle whatsoever. Fighting off some leftover mechs, the group bump into a gaggle of Quarians in a building, one of whom seems to be very cautious about Cerberus' interference. but fortuitously one of them is at least willing to talk. Tali'Zorah Naraya, our old friend and crewmate, is with them. As it would seem, a young Quarian was on his pilgrimage on this colony, and Tali is with this group hoping to find him. The Quarians are still very distrusting of Cerberus, but Shepard and Tali's kinship is at least able to convince both sides to play along and investigate their mysteries together. After all, this Quarian is seemingly alive as he was the one who activated the mechs, and that means he likely knows what happened to all the humans. We take down a very big mech and track this Quarian, Vitor, down to a warehouse at the other end of the colony, and he calmly informs us that he not only saw what happened to the colonists, but he has a recording of it.
You don't know. You didn't see. But I see everything.
The Collectors are some sort of mysterious species that has been known to live beyond an even more mysterious relay through which nobody but them have ever returned. Their very being is, in and of itself, a mystery. Their motives unknown, and they are, frankly, very poorly documented in records by the Citadel, almost being a mythical species in many regards. These Collectors are the ones who seem to have taken the colonists away. They unleash swarms of locusts that paralyze people and then take them, and they seem to have a desire to hunt and, dare I say, collect as many humans from as many colonies as possible. Vitor seems to have been spared, presumably as they weren't willing or able to track Quarian's whereabouts, and so we gather his data and hand him over to Tali to take back to the flotilla. Unfortunately, Tali has a mission of her own and regrettably informs us that she's not able to currently join us on our mission. Shepard and Tali wish each other well and hope to one day be reunited again, but for now, the Cerberus gang take Shepard and the data back to the elusive man for further investigation. He informs us that while he isn't necessarily fond of us showing kindness to Vitor, our results were more than adequate for the purposes that we were sent out for. Unfortunately, he himself doesn't have much more information on the Collectors, as he had already suspected their involvement in this whole ordeal. With hard evidence showing their involvement, he seems more than satisfied in his investment in Shepard, and he intends very much to equip us further by bolstering our ranks with a selection of vital personnel he believes will be assets to Shepard's investigation. Getting these people to work with Shepard will hopefully help him in tracking down the Collectors and, by extension, uncover the Reaper's involvement in all this. He does regrettably inform us that the previous squad we gathered to help take down Saren and Sovereign have splintered. Garrus has dropped off the grid, Kaidan is staunchly against Cerberus, Wrex has returned to his homeworld to work on the reunification of the Krogan as he had once dreamed, Liara is linked somehow to the Shadow Broker, and Tali has already given her reasons. Ashley also won't be available for some reason. The elusive man gives us two further pieces of information before we depart. Firstly, a recommendation to head to the space station called Omega and recruit the scientist Mordin Solus, and put him to work researching a way to counteract the paralysis that the Collector's Seeker swarms administer. Secondly, he informs us that he's recruited a pilot for us. Our old buddy Joker is back on our side, on a brand new ship entirely paid for and funded by Cerberus, the Normandy SR-2. The SR-1 from the first game may have been destroyed, but, well, this isn't the first game. Shepard, Joker, Miranda and Jacob all board the new Normandy, fully manned and fully staffed, including a brand new artificial intelligence module named Edie. Edie's role is to provide advice and analysis of missions, and when I say she's an AI, I mean she truly is more resembling of a Geth than she is something like Vigil. We'll obviously talk a lot more about Edie and our new crew members later, because for now we've got a mission to accomplish, and we need some new friends to do so. We can review the dossiers of the people we're looking for to find out some more information and where to find them. The brilliant Krogan scientist / warlord Dr. O'Keir on the planet Corlus, the dangerous and powerful biotic prisoner by the name of Jack aboard a prison ship named Purgatory, and a brilliant master thief by the name of Kasumi Goto on the Citadel. In addition, we have 3 people to recruit on the interstellar criminal haven Omega, the aforementioned Solarian named Dr. Mordin Solus, a mercenary and bounty hunter named Zaeed Massani, and the mysterious vigilante Archangel. With all these people to recruit in one place, it only makes sense to make Omega our first port of call.
I am Omega.
Immediately after docking, Zaeed is found having already been paid a pretty penny by the elusive man to join us on this mission. Nice. Only 25 words into this chapter and we've already recruited 1/3 of the people we came here to find. I suppose now is an appropriate time to sort of give a mention to the fact that this game does indeed have downloadable content, much like the first game. But unlike that game, it's pretty much impossible for me to fit absolutely all of the DLC into a single chapter. The reason for that being that it's quite a bit more varied in its contents. As I'm playing on the Legendary Edition, all of the DLC comes included, and unlike Pinnacle Station for the first game, none of the DLC in Mass Effect 2 or 3 for that matter was lost or removed in this remaster. I mention this now because, surprisingly, Zaeed himself is actually a piece of DLC that had to be downloaded separately to the original game. Granted, it was a free DLC pack as part of their quote-unquote Cerberus network service, which provided Zaeed and his loyalty mission the ability to visit the crash site of the Normandy SR-1, some new weapons and armour, and a set of missions under the name Firewalker that we'll all talk about later. There were also paid DLCs, including another squad mate in the previously mentioned Kasumi Goto and her loyalty mission, alternate outfits for many of the squad mates to wear, more optional weapons and armour sets, the comic featured earlier in the recap of the first game, and the 3 major mission packs entitled Overlord, Lair of the Shadow Broker, and Arrival. I left pretty much all of the DLC missions until after I finished the main game, as, unlike the first one, Mass Effect 2 also lets you continue your save file after finishing the main story. The exceptions to this being, of course, the companions Zaeed and Kasumi, as evidenced by the fact that I have just now recruited him. I'll save talking about Zaeed's personality and his loyalty mission for a later section, but you may have clocked onto the fact that I have numerous times now said the word loyalty mission, which I figure is best to explain real quick. Effectively, each and every one of our companions in this game has some unfinished business that is holding them back in their lives, something that is keeping them from committing 100% emotionally and physically to the mission at hand. It's not at all dissimilar to the missions from the first game where, for example, I helped Garrus track down that murderous doctor guy and led to Garrus seeking closure for a chapter of his life that had haunted him. The difference is that ultimately, that quest, as good as it was, had little to no actual bearing on the plot of the game, while these loyalty missions more effectively tie into everything that's going on by directly dictating how motivated each companion is to the mission, which is reflected in unlocking new abilities for them, as well as in providing more security for the spoiler section at the end of the game. If you know, you know. But to keep up an air of intrigue, I think I'll keep the reason for loyalty being important close to the chest until we've made a bit more progress than, literally just recruiting the first companion that isn't lumped on you against your will. That is to say, I think it's time that we follow up on some of our leads and track down our other 2 potential allies on Omega, Mordin and Archangel. After entering Omega proper, we head straight to the place where it's all hipping and happening, the local nightclub Afterlife. Quite immediately we catch the attention of the club's proprietor, a powerful and charismatic Asari named Arya Taloic, the de facto leader of Omega who effectively owns the whole station. If anyone is to know where to find these 2, it'd be her, but she is cautious about a famously dead Spectre rocking up with Cerberus goons and asking questions of a well-known crime lord. She makes it clear that she doesn't want any shenanigans in her presence and proceeds to tell us what we want to know. Archangel is a very unpopular figure on this station, as a smart and capable vigilante going around administering justice on a station whose primary export is criminal activity is pretty likely to lead anyone into a life of deep unpopularity. As it so happens, Archangel's unpopularity has caught up to him, and numerous large-scale crime syndicates and mercenary gangs have all teamed up in an unprecedented effort with one unifying goal in mind. They intend to kill Archangel. If he's going to help us, we need to make sure they are incapable of doing that. So the best bet seems to be infiltrating their little militia, sneaking our way through the front lines and arranging an impromptu meeting with Archangel, before flipping sides and helping him engage a counter-offensive against the mercs. All in all, terrible plan and dangerous all around, but it sounds fun. Mordin is fortunately a lot simpler to track down. Omega is currently undergoing a bit of a pandemic, and Mordin has established himself as the primary caregiver for the victims. He's holed up in a quarantined area of the station looking to administer care for the sick. That's pretty much all that Arya is willing to give us. She's insistent on not giving us information about herself or Omega, at least not until she can be sure about us, but the information she did give us is more than enough to track down our new friends. Shepard goes off on her way and helps a few local folks with their local problems. We have our first run-in with the Vulture, lovely, and do a bit of shopping. One thing this game lets you do is use your Paragon or Renegade persuasion options to wrangle yourself a discount at many stores. I guess I'll address it here because, why not? The morality system is back, and it's honestly, if anything, improved slightly from last time. It's got a little bit more to do now, with more dialogue options being affected by it, and even your facial scarring levels being affected by how good you are, as well as the perhaps controversial decision to equip some cutscenes with QuickTime events that can be activated to use an interrupt in good or evil action. This is pretty similar to before. You do a good interrupt and you help someone, or you do a bad interrupt and you push them out of a window. If you've played a game with a morality system, you likely know what to expect, and if you've already watched my video on the first Mass Effect, then you super duper know what to expect. And while we're talking about the first video and game, side quests in this game are hugely improved all around and a lot more interesting in general. As such, I'm going to be talking a bit more in depth about some of them and occasionally include them in discussions of an area, and since I'm talking about Omega currently, I think that segues nicely into A side quest we can find on Omega involves a Krogan geezer by the name of Patriarch who was the previous ruler of Omega prior to Aria's rise to power. After having been beaten up by her, she chose to make an example of him and kept him around to effectively showboat to everyone of her combat prowess and, for better or worse, she appointed him as an advisor, even giving him the name Patriarch as a joke, as that is a word that would have no real meaning to the all-female Asari. In spite of this kind of sad position that he finds himself in, he is the target of an attempted assassination, and Aria wants him kept alive but wants to keep her hands out of it, so she requests that Shepard do it. Shepard thusly informs Patriarch that he's supposed to go into hiding, but the old man doesn't want to, electing that it's for the best that he dies in order to humiliate Aria. However, an alternative exists. In offering to fight in Patriarch's honour, it would establish him, culturally, as a mighty Krogan commanding a powerful force. He likes this idea, and so we do it, elevating him back to a much more flattering position than he was in, and reigniting the fire in his hearts. Aria may not love the solution, but seeing Patriarch so happy is oddly cute, so who cares? Anyway, enough procrastinating already, and let's talk about the pandemic. Mordin Solus is locked behind a heavily fortified part of Omega under armed guard. This plague affects just about all species found in the galaxy, with the exception of humans and Vorcha, albeit the latter are immune to just about every ailment, leading to a lot of suspicion and infighting amongst the people of Omega, debating the whodunit regarding this plague's rampant spreading. It's highly infectious, highly fatal, and, as if that wasn't bad enough, the Blue Suns mercenary group are using the plague as an opportunity to make a power grab, and expand their influence on Omega by eliminating their rivals, with many local Vorcha seemingly having had a similar idea at the same time. With all that in mind, Mordin is clearly caught in the middle of perhaps one of the worst places to be. Getting him out isn't going to be a walk in the park. And yet it still sounds easier than rescuing Archangel will be. We convince the checkpoint to allow us in so that we may help the people inside, and so Shepard, Miranda and Zaeed head in there to administer aid to the civilians and find and recruit Mordin. Once inside, we are almost immediately greeted with adversity from the Blue Suns. Find ourselves some of the sick, including an unfortunate Batarian who tells us that all the evidence points to a human having manufactured and distributing this virus. He also fortunately points us in the direction of Mordin, but also peculiarly warns that Mordin is seemingly quite a dangerous man, who's proven himself capable of defending his clinic from the Blue Suns, and even using the Blue Suns' bodies as a warning to warn off potential troublemakers. Pressing on forwards towards Mordin's rather morbid-sounding clinic, we blast our way past some more Blue Suns, help out some more refugees by pointing them in the direction of Mordin, take out a few Vorcha, reprimand some looters, and finally arrive at the clinic. The place is hectic, with Mordin hard at work on uncovering the cause and cure for these ailments, and upon speaking to him we see that his mannerisms are perhaps even more hectic.
From area, too well armed to be refugees, no mercenary uniform, quarantine still in effect. Here for something else? Vorcha? Crew to clean them out? Unlikely. Vorcha a symptom, not a cause. The plague? Investigating possible use as bioweapon? No. Too many guns, not enough data, equipment. Soldiers, not scientists. Yes.
Pretty much every Solarian we've met on our journey so far has spoken at an excessively fast pace, but wowee does Mordin take the cake. As is typical, he's apprehensive about Cerberus, but he's pretty easily swayed by the request for his scientific expertise to help deal with the Collectors. Alas, he will not leave until the plague cure has been distributed. A noble cause, and regardless of that, the power gets shut off and he is also missing an assistant. With so much to do, Shepard informs him of the sick Batarian while Mordin investigates a possible connection between this plague and the Collectors' attacks themselves. Fight past all the baddies and make our way to the power facility, where Mordin's assistant is being threatened by a Blue Sun. We calmly de-escalate the situation, send the lad on his way and get to work on distributing the cure via the fans. It seems the Collectors have hired the Vorcha in this area to get to work on distributing the plague as a sort of beta test for more efficient harvesting and or slaughtering methods. We eliminate the Vorcha, insert the cure, and do everything we can to end the lockdown. Mordin is thankful, but his outlook on life is overall very peculiar. He's a doctor, but his views on violence as a means to tie up loose ends is very interesting. With the plague cured, Mordin is now all but ready to join our ship, revealing himself as a former espionage expert, having once been a member of STG, the same organisation as Captain Kirahei from back on Vermeer. With all of the data acquired from Freedom's progress, Mordin is able to get to work straight away on investigating the Seeker swarms deployed by the Collectors, and work on synthesizing a cure. Additionally, his STG training means he's guaranteed to be a very useful member of our squad out in the field if needs be. We can also visit Mordin as a way to acquire research upgrades for our gear, but again, we'll talk a bit about that in the gameplay section where I'll devote a bit more time to progression than last time. Omega still holds one more friend for us to meet, and, as such, Shepard, Zaeed and Mordin squad up and head to the meeting of the Mercs to sign up as, effectively, cannon fodder. Along the way we get roofied by a bartender, deal with that whole mess and scare off some petty criminals. With no more distractions, we sign up to be a part of the Archangel hunting party under the guise of looking for a supposedly massive payday. 500 credits. Wow. We head on over to the area where all the mercenaries are all set up with Archangel trapped in a building. Despite him being pinned down, he still has the situational advantage based on his elevated position, looking over a very exposed bridge. The plan that they've set into place is pretty desperate, with the expectation being to have Shepard and co hold his attention on the bridge, while an infiltration team create a back passage and take him out from behind. This isn't exactly what we're looking for, as the goal is to get Archangel out alive, so it's time to figure out more about this plan and devise a way to double-cross what is essentially an entire army of somewhat trained mercenaries. EDI advises we weaken the capabilities of the mercenaries' most powerful weapons, and the leaders of these groups tell us that Archangel is pretty much an enigma, with nobody really knowing much about the guy other than that he's a Turian with deadly aim, and of his extreme capabilities in dealing efficient justice. He sounds a little like a guy I know. Anyway, we meet with the Blue Suns and it seems that Zaeed is pretty familiar with these guys. They direct us to the bridge and gear everything up for the final assault. We do what we can to sabotage the infiltration efforts while still making our way inside Archangel's base of operations and finally making our acquaintance with...
Shepard.
Reunited at last. It would seem that Garrus has been busy these past 2 years, and he's certainly become even more capable than he was before. It really is good to have one of our old squad back with us, but he's not truly back until Shepard is able to get him back onto the Normandy. Garrus' suggestion is that the four of them hold out at this location and fight off this army together, with the mercenaries seemingly gearing up for one last desperate all-in assault. Eliminate the leader of the Eclipse and have Mordin stick with Garrus while Shepard and Zaeed head down to fight off the Blood Pack looking to flank the position. With the rear assault dealt with, it's time to go full frontal and eliminate the Blood Pack leader. With 2 down and 1 to go, Zaeed's old friends introduce the squad to their little friend, a gunship piloted by their leader. Fortunately, per EDI's advice, the ship isn't exactly working at peak efficiency, but it is still unfortunately able to unload hell on Garrus. He's injured, bad, but that just fuels the desire to kill this bozo even more. The gunship crashes to the ground and Garrus, gasping for life, is quickly evacuated to the Normandy.
Shepard.
It seems that Garrus is very much like Shepard now, implanted with various miraculous medical technology, cybernetics and adorned with facial scarring that'd make a Krogan blush. All in all, Garrus seems pretty optimistic about everything in spite of his new look, and he eagerly leaves his life as Batman behind to join Shepard's crew once more. It's good to have another old friend with us for this mission. Having Joker and Chakwa aboard, oh yeah, by the way, Chakwa is also here too, is great, but having Garrus back out in the field with us is going to feel like old times. With a good portion of our crew now assembled, we leave Omega behind and head off towards the Citadel. I really appreciate Omega conceptually, as I think it's a really unique way to start off the game, compared to the comparatively more sterile and palatable Citadel that the first game opened with. Omega has a lot of character to it, and the quests we do there to recruit Mordin and Garrus are just full of so much personality and intrigue that help flesh out the universe of the games in new and unique ways that the first game could have never dared to explore. I really just think this whole place is unique and awesome, and I eagerly await returning to Omega in the future. On our way to visit the Citadel, we stop by the site where the Normandy SR-1 crashed 2 years ago, where Shepard more or less lost her life and where... I'm sorry, I get pretty emotional thinking about it, but it's where we lost Presley. This is a short little exploration-focused romp all about reminiscing over the first game. It's pretty effectively emotional and something that helps make the fight against the Collectors immediately personal, since they literally killed Shepard. It's a neat little DLC, ultimately quite pointless in the grand scheme of things, but I appreciate being given the chance to pay our respects before hopping back aboard the Normandy and setting off towards the Citadel.
I invited Shepard here to speak with the Council.
Once we arrive at the Citadel, we are more or less immediately introduced to Kasumi Goto, criminal mastermind and hacker extraordinaire. She's cunning, she's sneaky, and she's really... friendly. She has a great energy, and since the Elusive Man is offering her a large salary to join this mission, it seems like a no-brainer to invite her to join the ranks of the Normandy. 2 Cerberus personnel, an old friend, a scrawny scientist, an old man, and a wanted criminal. We've certainly gathered a ragtag team here, and while the idea of bolstering those ranks with a prisoner and a warlord is very enticing, it seems prudent to look around the Citadel and pay a visit to some other old friends like Captain Anderson. The first thing to notice about the Citadel is how much security seems to have tightened up, no doubt a result of living in a post-Sarin 11 galaxy where people are afraid of the next major attack on the Citadel. The second thing is just how much CSEC seems to have changed over the past 2 years. Whereas before it was made apparent that Harkin was an uncommon exception in regards to the typical CSEC officer, humans now make up a considerable chunk of the police force on the Citadel. Another more or less direct result of Saren's attack thinning the numbers and the need to bolster the ranks with capable and flexible recruits. Due to Shepard being declared legally dead, she has to be registered back into the system by the new human CSEC captain, a man named Bailey, who seems to have incorporated some of the ideas Garrus had regarding more, shall we say, efficient policing methods. All in all, things have changed, Anderson included. He's sunk into his role as the Human Council well, and even though the stress of the job has no doubt altered his outlook, he still remains an ultimately positive force and a keen, strategic but nevertheless open-minded counsellor. While he still certainly believes Shepard's claim of the Reapers, the rest of the Council is still bothersomely sceptical about the true cause of Saren's attack on the Citadel.
Ah yes, Reapers. The immortal race of sentient starships allegedly waiting in dark space. We have dismissed that claim.
Vigil seemingly ran out of juice after our run-in with it, and with the Citadel's knowledge of our new relationship with Cerberus, they even go so far as to suggest that Shepard's return is tantamount to treason. That said, Anderson is able to talk them down and have Shepard's previous role as a Spectre reinstated, so as to showcase support of her investigations into the Collectors. Overall, it could have gone a lot worse, and while the support is ultimately symbolic, it can never hurt to keep the word treason from being discussed. As the chat is finishing up, Udina enters and reprimands Shepard's return to the Citadel as a reckless move, positing that Anderson needs to discuss things with him before making rash decisions.
I don't answer to you, Udina. Why don't you go to your office and think about that for a while?
Anderson clearly still sees Udina's uses as a politician and a diplomat, but it is nice to see someone else treat him as a petulant child. For now, that more or less concludes our formal duties on the Citadel, but we still take time to explore the wars and provide aid to those in need. A Quarian being profiled, some Krogan looking to break into the Presidium and eat fish, and we of course take our time to acquire discounts at the stores by spouting the famous line.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.
After establishing ourselves a disgusting corporate sellout, we're able to spend our hard-earned credits on a variety of goodies, collectibles if you will. Model ships, pet fish, and a cute little critter described as a space hamster, which can all be kept safe and secure in Shepard's captain quarters on the Normandy. It really helps establish that feeling of it being your ship, and both the Citadel and Omega have many shops where we can acquire these items to help make a ship a home. With Kasumi on board, the Council back on our side, and the Normandy feeling all cozy and snug, it seems as good a time as any to go and acquire this prisoner, whom the elusive man has paid top dollar to see the release of.
Welcome to the Purgatory, Shepard.
In orbit of the planet, I want to say it's pronounced Erinal, is a Turian prison colony run by the Blue Suns that goes by the name of Purgatory. The most dangerous and dastardly vagabonds, miscreants, ruffians, and ne'er-do-wells of the galaxy are holed up aboard this ship to live out their days in something akin to, shockingly, Purgatory. Being up in space, escape from the prison is nigh impossible, making this extremely well-guarded prison an exceptionally problematic place to be locked up in. Shepard is here on the order of the elusive man to oversee the release and transfer of a prisoner by the name of Jack. After declining to hand over our weapons, the Warden is evidently displeased with us, but the money that Cerberus has offered is seemingly more than worthwhile the security risk Shepard now presumably presents, as he ushers us along regardless to acquire the woman that they worryingly refer to as a package. One brief tour and a bit of mingling with the prisoners later, and we've been betrayed by the Warden. We take out the Blue Suns he sends in to try and hold us captive and release Jack and the rest of the prisoners from their cells. Sure, we maybe incited a little teensy out-of-control prison riot, but after seeing Jack single-handedly annihilate a bunch of gigantic mechs with her biotic abilities, it seems to all be a worthwhile investment in the end. Besides, the Warden had it coming, so it seems a good idea to follow Jack's trail of carnage and try and recruit her to our crew. And when I say a trail of carnage, I mean it. This prison has been utterly wrecked and torn asunder by her and the other prisoners here fighting back against the guards and mechs. It's a right mess, but the squad plows on through and makes their way to the other end of the ship, dispatching the naughty Warden along the way.
Stop!
Jack expresses her ire at seeing the Cerberus logo on the Normandy, establishing clearly that she wants very little to do with us. Cerberus has seemingly been chasing after Jack for years with the intent of capturing her. It's hard to say at this time what exactly the elusive man would want from her in the long run, but as long as she's a part of Shepard's squad, Jack will be a very useful commodity to the team. While she's still distrusting of her, she's happy to come on board once Shepard promises her the ability to access Cerberus's data files on the ship. Miranda, on the other hand, does not agree with this concept. These two are clearly not going to get along well at all, but since Shepard is in charge, there is nothing that Miranda can do to stop her from giving Jack full access as a member of the crew. We'll catch up on why the two of them dislike each other later, but for now it seems best not to poke the bear and get them at each other's throats. Instead, why don't we go check out that final dossier that the elusive man gave us, the one about the Krogan Warlord.
My legacy is perfection.
Corlus is a planet commonly used as a scrapyard for broken down and destroyed starcraft. As the rag and bone industry is of course a blossoming part of galactic civilization, and scrapping for parts will likely never go out of fashion, this corner of the cosmos is a popular locale for burgeoning mercenaries to come and stake out their claim on a mighty pile of scrap. As such, it should come as no surprise that Shepard once again has a run-in with the Blue Suns on this planet. Frankly, I'm getting a bit sick of these guys constantly getting in the way of our making new friends. After coaxing out some info from a wounded mercenary, Shepard is informed that the Warlord we're after, Okeer, has seemingly made a biological breakthrough and found a way to clone the Krogan, creating batches of unstable and incapable genetic copies of Krogan with the intent of formulating a massive army for the Blue Suns. This Grunt doesn't know much else about what's going on up there, but it seems that there's enough information to go off of. The Blue Suns are up to no good, and Okeer is currently sat behind an army of them. Oh well, it's not the first Blue Sun army we've taken out, and at this rate, something tells me that it won't be the last. After taking out a few dozen mercenary foot soldiers, Shepard and the gang find themselves in conversation with one of these tank-bred Krogan. He admits to us that he's been alive for about 1 week, and in that time he has had nothing but a dark urge to kill all that he sees. These Krogan are formed at full size, but the process is seemingly imperfect, and while they are seemingly fed information telling them to kill to survive, what he says is confusing, like a riddle. He must survive against the enemy that threatens all of his kind? What does that mean? The Blue Suns? The Solarians? Or perhaps it's a metaphor for the Genophage? It's probably the Genophage. Pressing onwards with his help, he promises to hold the line for Shepard and fight off anyone coming from the rear, before he slinks away and ushers us onwards. After cutting through yet more and more Blue Suns... One sec, that clip was really unsatisfying to watch. I want to just do a little frame by frame go back over that and see what exactly went wrong there. So as we can see, there is a man stood at a ledge. We approach the ledge. We make note of this. We use our throw ability to push him off the ledge, and there it is. Heartbreak. Sorry for this, brief reprieve. I just had to make sure that I was not the only one cursed with this knowledge. We'll get back to all the Warlord stuff now. Shepard has a chance encounter with the woman who used to work on a Genophage cure for Saren, and yet she's back again working on one with Okeer. I admire her noble intentions of helping the Krogan, but man, she has a terrible taste in bosses. We let her leave once more and continue the ascent to Okeer. Upon meeting him, he explains his reasons for his experiments. His plan is to create the perfect Krogan specimen, harder, faster, stronger and better than all the other Krogan, so that this perfect being can showcase Krogan prowess and restore honour to the species, pretty much intending to do so via force. He wants revenge, chaos for the most part, and while his scientific mind is clearly incredible, his discarding of his rejects is almost as cruel as his intentions. While it's pretty debatable if we even really want such a scummy guy on our side, his prowess and his prototype Krogan could still be very valuable in the fight against the Collectors, so bringing him on board seems worthwhile. Unfortunately, the chaos on this planet started from Okeer's lollygagging to produce this perfect specimen, causing the Blue Suns to lose patience. And the Blue Suns are all out of patience, leaving their leader on this planet to turn against Okeer and try and dismantle his base of operations, killing his perfect Krogan specimen. After a brief sojourn to deal with her, the alarms start blaring as Okeer's lab is flooded with toxins resulting in his death. In his last moments he recorded us a message to tell us that he wishes for us to take his prototype perfect Krogan, whom he refers to as his Grunt, as he believes that we can utilise it against the Collectors and to still restore hope to the Krogan down the line. Mordin and Miranda are cautious about taking such a prominent threat on board, but we need all the help we can get, and the genetically perfect Krogan seems like a logical choice to cause chaos in the Collector's bases. Despite their warnings to keep him locked up, and despite a lot of common sense perhaps suggesting that Okir's ruthless nature means any creation that he considers to be pure could be problematic in the long run, you can't deny that the nature of the beast is still a curious one. As such, Shepard requests that the tank is opened, and Edie complies as she assures us that while Okir's data is likely prominent in the Krogan's mind, it isn't necessarily indicative that the young Krogan would share his thoughts or agree with Okir. In essence, it'd be like having a young child on board, a young child that is capable of killing a man with a single headbutt, and it would be up to Shepard and the crew to impart wisdom unto him and help him to make sense of Okir's ramblings. With all that said, I lovingly welcome my new Krogan son onto the ship and crack open the tank. Very quickly he pins Shepard to the wall in an act of what is likely confusion and anger, and politely asks us to name him before he kills us. Despite asking us for a name, he chooses the name Grunt for himself shortly after. As Edie suggested, Grunt is very quick to abandon the legacy that Okir intended for him. He doesn't want to stick it to the man and restore Krogan honor or incite revolution or whatever. Instead, he suggests he only wants to fight and kill the strongest things he can fight and kill, to which he swiftly concurs that the Collectors sound like a worthy adversary. Clearly he has a lot to learn, but I think I can make my new son love me in due time. And so, with Jack and Grunt now aboard the ship, we finished all of the dossiers that the Elusive Man has given us, and just in time too, because it seems he's managed to get one step ahead of the Collectors and found where they intend to strike next.
It shouldn't be a surprise the Collectors are interested in you. Shepard, I think we have them. Horizon, one of our colonies in the Terminus systems, just went silent. One of your former crew, Kaidan Alenko, is stationed on Horizon. It's an outreach program to improve Alliance relation with the colonies. But they're up to something. They might be going after him to get to you. This is the most warning we've ever had, Shepard. Good luck.
The Collectors and the Normandy aren't the only things going to the colony of Horizon, it would seem. Kaidan is there on some sort of secret Alliance mission, which means we're probably headed into a very, very awkward conversation. As luck would have it, Mordin believes his antidote to the Seeker Swarms is ready, and so we drop down on the planet with him and Garrus in tow and seek out Kaidan, who may be being targeted by the Collectors purposefully. Kaidan is trying his best to protect this colony, but unfortunately the Collectors beat the Normandy to Horizon, and the Seekers are unleashed on the planet. We get a brief glimpse into the eyes of what seems to be the leader of the Collectors by the name of Harbinger, who seems to be able to inhabit and control them as he wishes by jacking into their HCMI port. They start dragging off the colonists, including one that Kaidan seemed to know personally, and we drop down ready to try and intercept the Collectors and save who we can. The gang fight their way past some Collectors, exploring the houses and looking for any signs of life. Quickly we stumble upon a husk, just like the ones the Reapers were using back when Saren was calling the shots. Seemingly this only goes to further confirm that the Reapers are pulling the strings with the Collectors, with this Harbinger almost definitely being a Reaper itself. Speaking of Harbinger, he reveals himself again and we get a chance to try out a cool laser against him and find a plethora of paralysed people. Upon entering a larger mechanical facility, Shepard actually happens across a person who is presently not paralysed, and he is frankly terrified of what's going on. He informs that Kaidan is on the colony, even going so far as to blame his help for the reason that the Collectors have attacked, and stating that the colony was supposed to have large automated defense towers online that would help deter from incidents like this. He also believes that Kaidan was doing some sort of spying during his time on the colony, which is also admittedly probably true. This mechanic points Shepard in the direction of the tower defense segment to try and get the Collector ship to leave. After gunning down wave after wave of Collector troops, the defenses are reached and the ground crew is able to communicate with the Normandy again. Edie will require some time to get it up and running, however, meaning that once again we have to gun down wave after wave of Collector troops, each more horrifyingly and eldritch in nature than the last. With the defences now back online, the Collectors almost instantly skedaddle from Horizon with half the colony already on board. Unfortunate, but Garrus reassures Shepard that she did more than most would have. This activates a neuron in the mechanic's mind who recognises her as a big shot Alliance hero. And that is when Kaidan interrupts us. The two embrace, using this opportunity to catch up, albeit Kaidan has clearly got a few issues with the whole not being dead situation. Shepard reassures him that she was, in fact, dead and that she didn't want to reopen old wounds by re-entering his life after her resurrection. Besides, it's not like we haven't been busy. And Kaidan seems to know that we've been busy too, as he knows that we've been working with Cerberus. We try our best to reassure him that our working with Cerberus is both temporary and for the greater good, but he's having none of it. He trusts Shepard enough to be doing the right thing, but he doesn't one bit trust Cerberus and makes it clear that he wants nothing to do with this. I tried desperately to get him on board for our mission, but he leaves Horizon without us. And that's that. No matter what, we can't recruit Kaidan in this game at all. No matter what, his reservations about Cerberus will always result in him leaving us and not trusting in us. It's safe to say that any relationship he and Shepard had in the first game, their romantic feelings for one another and even their friendship before that, is more or less over and done with. The two have parted to pursue their own goals. I think it's a real interesting decision to effectively do away with so much of the cast of the first game this time around. I mean, sure, we have Joker, Chakra and Garrus on board, but both Kaidan and Tali have denied travelling with us, and from what the Elusive Man said, it seems that Liara and Wrex are likely to be too busy to want to join us going forwards, which makes our collection of companions limited primarily to new characters who we get to learn to love instead. I think it's smart to buckle down on new characters, but still give us new angles and lenses through which to view the OGs. Having Kaidan's character expanded by introducing caution in regards to his attitude with working with us on this mission helps alleviate a lot of that blandness he so often gets accused of. And yes, that does mean that had I chosen to rescue Ashley instead of Kaidan in the first game, we would this time be faced with her giving us a similar treatment. That's something that I particularly like, since as I said, my biggest issues with Ashley stem from her extremely pro-humanity attitudes, similar attitudes shared by Cerberus, and so by having her so staunchly opposed to Cerberus helps alleviate some of that association from her and helps guide her towards being more well-rounded and likeable. I mean, still perhaps not enough for her to be considered one of my favourite companions by any means, but I think this debate does a solid job at rounding out the two human companions from the first game, who are often associated with being uninteresting and or problematic in many regards. I can still see why people aren't fond of them, but I like this interaction as a way of giving us some Kaidan time but without focusing too heavily on him. In spite of any ill will sent her way, Shepard reports her findings on Horizon to the Elusive Man, who seems to have not only leaked our involvement to Kaidan and as such lured the Collectors to Horizon, something that ultimately put those colonists at a direct risk, and also confirming some of Kaidan's major discomforts with Cerberus. Their risky and downright disgusting methodologies do not justify their means necessarily. Despite this, the meeting is able to be at least somewhat civil, with our boss fully committed to finding information about this Omega-4 relay that the Collectors have been documented as the only species to ever safely navigate. Wherever it leads is no doubt dangerous, and the Elusive Man believes the key to victory will lie beyond it. As such, he provides Shepard with an additional set of dossiers and a bit of key advice. Keep the ship in top quality condition, both via upgrades and through the earned loyalty of the crew, in order to make this mission go as smoothly as possible. The dossiers he has provided lead to 3 new people he believes will be crucial to this mission. The first is a powerful Astray matriarch who serves as a Justicar, an elite monastic group devoted wholly to justice and a strict moral code. The second, a trained Drell assassin with proficient combat prowess in a wide range of combat skills. Both of these dossiers lead to the Asari colony of Ilium, which makes it a seemingly convenient location to stop off at, especially since Liara is reported as being stationed there. The third dossier directs us to an old friend, Tali, who has seemingly been sent on a classified assignment deep in Geth-controlled space. The working theory being that helping her complete her mission will lead to her rejoining the Normandy to help Shepard out, just like old times. The other thing to consider, however, is what the Elusive Man implied regarding loyalty of the crew. It seems that pretty much everyone on board has some sort of unfinished business they'd really like to get off their chests, so that they can devote themselves to fully focusing on the mission, and as it happens, one of our current crew has found evidence that helping them will also take place on Ilium. So we arrive at Ilium, get given some information about where we might find this Justicar as well as Liara, and make our way into the city proper. Weirdly, we happen to have a run-in with a woman who has made communication with the Vakni Queen that we rescued in the first game. The Vakni have gained some knowledge of the Reapers, and pledge that when the time comes, she wishes to help Shepard. It's nice to have friends, even if they are gigantic insect queens, so that is duly noted. We also have a run-in with the administrative assistant of the director from Novaria, as well as Shiala, the woman who was controlled by the Thorian back on Feros. She's green now. There's also an Asari who's been having relationship troubles with her Krogan boyfriend, and each and every one of these people we take a little bit of time to help them out where we can, talking to people on their behalf, learning their histories and mediating on matters important to them. All of this prior to popping in and paying a visit to another one of our old friends, Liara. Her assistant ushers us in and explains that Liara has become a powerful information broker that, while not quite rivaling the influence of the Shadow Broker, is still one of the most influential people on Ilium. Liara is very pleased to see Shepard, perhaps even more so than anyone so far barring Garrus. It's clear that her new lifestyle is suiting her, even if I did always find this change to be quite jarring. She offers to us her information-seeking abilities, immediately demonstrating them by explaining that she is aware of the hunt for the Collectors, but ultimately declines coming back on board the Normandy due to her commitments here. We'll circle back around to Liara once the collectors are dealt with, but for now she sends us on a little errand to disable some security checkpoints. It sounds kinda fishy, sure, but Liara can be trusted, right? We agree to help her and head on over to the local watering hole, which seems to be under threat of Conrad Werner? If you remember, this guy was something of a K-pop fanboy of Shepard back on the Citadel, but it seems he's gone a bit loco in the past 2 years, claiming that she threatened him. He also seems to have found or recreated some of Shepard's famous N7 armor. All in all, it seems somehow this random weirdo has taken the death of Shepard far worse than even Shepard's closest friends. But we talk him down and get him to go home eventually. Hopefully that's the last we'll see of him. We'll circle back to our Ilium adventures in a bit, but while we're at this bar it seems like a good idea to follow up on something that one of our squad mates asked us to look into. So let's dive into our first companion chapter and give a brief overview of earning the loyalty of...
Thank you, Commander.
Before we dive in, I will just make note that I will be doing devoted sections to companions this time around, focused only on when, chronologically, I did their loyalty missions in-game. As such, they're going to be a bit scattered all over the place based on when I did them. Some will be a bit bunched up, others will be a bit more sporadic and interspersed with other stuff. Rest assured they will all come before the end of the main game, and therefore before the major DLC packs. The first crew member I'd like to discuss is our second in command, Miranda Lawson, who is at this point well established as a high-ranking Cerberus officer. She showcases a lot of loyalty to the organisation and to the elusive man personally. She's a pretty powerful biotic, and she is, in her own words, genetically perfect. In every way she has been upgraded and augmented from your typical human into being highly intelligent, physically strong, and extremely attractive. Concerningly, all of these traits were specified by her father, a wealthy and influential megalomaniac who worked on creating these perfect daughters using scientific research. She has no mother, no family besides this disturbing father, and the few allies that she has made at Cerberus, the elusive man and Jacob included. And despite her tough outer shell and confident stride, chatting to her aboard the Normandy reveals quickly that she is actually pretty lonely and uncertain. I think Jack puts it pretty well by referring to Miranda as something of a cheerleader, in that Miranda is more or less blindly supporting something that she probably knows isn't doing things with the best of intentions, but Miranda sought the organisation for protection from her overbearing father. She does generally agree with the overall goals of Cerberus to help humanity, but this is called into question when she comes to Shepard with a revelation. Miranda is not an only child. In addition to Cerberus providing protection for Miranda from her father, the deal extended further to Miranda's twin sister Oriana, who is now the target of a galaxy-wide manhunt headed by their father. Oriana is on Ilium, leading a happy and normal life. But Miranda approaches Shepard with the news that her father has found Oriana and is looking to abduct her. As such, whilst we're on Ilium, it seems only fitting that Miranda's strife is alleviated and that we devote our time and resources to keeping her sister safe. After all, the elusive man did say that we should keep all of our crew happy and loyal, and this is the price for Miranda's loyalty. We meet with Miranda's contact, who informs us that Eclipse, one of the mercenary groups from Omega, is seeking Oriana. One of Miranda's old friends, Niket, is our contact for this mission, and ultimately Miranda elects for herself, Shepard and Jacob to simply drive over to Eclipse and start blasting. Draw Eclipse's attention away from Oriana, buy as much time as possible and try to get her out of there in relative safety. Fortunately, Eclipse wants to keep Miranda alive as well, so the leader of the first group we encounter is willing to chat with us first. He reveals a few nuggets of information stating that Niket will be unable to help us, and that his captain is likely to forego the orders to keep Miranda safe, and utilise excessive force if Miranda pursues Oriana any further. He threatens us, but Miranda is uninterested in giving this up, opening up a firefight. A few Eclipse thugs aren't anything special for us at this point, so we clear them out and move on. Miranda patches into their radios to keep us informed of their tactics, and then has a little word with us about some more unusual biological developments in her family. Specifically, she explains to us that Oriana, while being her twin sister, is actually about 15 years younger than Miranda, as she was grown when Miranda was a teenager off of scrapings, I guess? The whole thing is pretty icky, but that means that Miranda's personal stakes in all of this are even more clear, since Oriana was taken from her father when she was just a baby. Oriana knows nothing of the life that she was saved from, or of Miranda, and has only ever known the normal, happy-go-lucky family life that she was raised in. Miranda, despite how it may seem, really does have a heart, and her heart is telling her to save her sister and keep her from spending the remainder of her teenage years held hostage by someone who's clearly far more evil than the elusive man can ever claim to be. However, Miranda also wants to stay out of Oriana's life, only ever monitoring from afar to keep her safe. This complicates things, as does her contact's possible swaying to the other side. Despite this, we did still save the galaxy 2 years ago, so this should be pretty easy. After taking out another batch of mercenaries, we meet face to face with Niket and the Eclipse captain. After the captain hilariously blasts a woman away, Miranda has a chat with her old friend. Niket found out what Miranda just told us, that she'd taken Oriana as a baby, and decided to flip sides. He also got paid a lot of money. Niket has fortunately kept Oriana's information largely private from her father, meaning the information he has lives and dies with him, and so Miranda attempts to cut the loose end off by eliminating him. We stop her, of course, but the captain decides that enough's enough, and oh my word, look at her go. Kill her and her friends, move on through to the next area, and finally find Oriana. Miranda is happy to see her safe and sound, but she's also very clearly... let's go with wistful. She's sad. She wants to have that normal life that her sister has, and with Niket now gone, she truly has nobody left who truly understands her, except for maybe Shepard. And that's why I encourage Miranda to introduce herself to her sister, to maintain a relationship that is relatively normal, to really experience humanity for the first time in her life, not just to make her loyal, but because even Cerberus' cheerleader deserves to be happy.
Well, here I am.
With Miranda's loyalty secured and no doubt giving her a lot more to think about regarding her future with Cerberus and her sister, it seems like a good time to make a start on the reason we came to William to begin with, and get to work on those dossiers. If you recall, we were given two, an Asari Justicar and a Drell Assassin. We've met plenty of Asari on our journey, but there weren't any Drell in the first game, so in my opinion that one should be a lot more interesting to experience first. Before that though, we finish up the job we were doing for Liara and get an even more definitive no as a response to joining us on the Normandy. Liara is working on something regarding the Shadow Broker, something big, and she will call on us when the time is needed. But for now she needs to work on it alone, which is good because I'm pretty sure we just killed her assistant. Regrettable, but nevertheless this chapter's not about her. We need to track down a Drell, and she has given us the information that a worker down by the taxi service station has spoken to him and likely knows his approximate whereabouts. Remember that Asari diplomat we did a job for in the first game? She sort of hired us to track down his sister, but it turns out it was to get her sister killed and the whole thing was just super shady. Well, as it turns out, this woman worked for her, but ultimately left when she found out about all of her dodgy dealings. And as it would just so happen, her dodgy dealings are now catching up to her. The Drell assassin, Thane Krios, has decided, without having even been hired by anyone, to hunt her down and kill her. She's holed up on the top floor of a gigantic tower patrolled by armed Eclipse mercenaries, and so getting to her seems to be difficult. If Thane thinks he can do it, however, then we shall do it too. Fortunately, there is a second tower under construction, so in order to follow Thane we're going to have to make our way up there. This Asari offers us a ride over, but it's going to be a one-way ticket, and once we're there we're going to have to figure it out for ourselves. It's risky, it's crazy, but his help will be beneficial, and I'm pretty sure keeping him alive on this hit would be appreciated. So, under cover of darkness, she drops us off at the base of the tower. Almost immediately we are met with adversity when mechs begin to attack us. We meet a Solarian worker who was attacked by the assassination target Nasana's mercenaries. They attacked the workers to clear the area due to her paranoia of the impending assassination attempt, and many workers were slaughtered as a result. Shepard promises to help as many people as she can, even if it's more apparent that Nasana has what's coming to her. I don't necessarily intend to stop Thane, but it would still be nice to intercept him if possible. As such, the gang continues through the building past some of the mercenaries and begin their ascent. Higher up we find a gaggle of even more Solarian workers holed up in a locked room. Like the one downstairs, they're terrified of what's happening here and are worried that Nasana's goons are going to take them down. They also inform us that they were locked in this room by a stranger, whom Garrus deduces to likely be Thane. We send them off on their way and continue up, where we meet one of the Eclipse mercenaries. He tries to threaten Shepard, but after a little convincing he gives up some information regarding Thane's approximate whereabouts. We pursue his lead and stumble into yet another room of Solarian workers. One of them threatens us before we talk him down and he faints. A mercenary had apparently threatened these Solarians prior, before being shot out of nowhere. Presumably Thane once again. The Solarians point us to the bridge between the two buildings, the only way to the penthouse of the other tower, and we send them on their way down and continue chasing Thane. The bridge is an especially chaotic combat encounter, but once making it to the other end, Shepard comes face to face with Nasana. Like most, she's surprised that Shepard is alive, and she seems to be full to the brim with paranoia. She believes that Shepard is the one here to kill her, but unfortunately for her, the truth is far more dangerous. She tries to talk us down and justify her actions, but... Oh, what was that noise? Oh my, oh goodness. And just like that, Nasana is dead, and we didn't even have to lift a finger. I must say it's all very impressive, as Garrus agrees. And perhaps even more interesting is how, after Thane is done with his slaughter, he stops everything to pray. Not for Nassana, no, but for himself. He atones for the sins he has committed, something that is very unique, but he ultimately seems to be at a bit of a loss over our being here. He deduces that Shepard wants to meet with him, and while he somewhat disapproves of the chaos that her arrival caused with all the gunshots and explosions going off in his wake, he at least concludes that the distraction proved valuable to help him get past the guards. As such, he's willing to hear us out, that Shepard is looking for the Collectors. Thane is familiar with them and understands the risks of the mission. He explains that he intended the killing of Nassana to be his last job, as he is diseased with a short time left to live. A short time he intends to fill by righting the wrongs of the galaxy, punishing the wicked and making the universe a little bit brighter. That's why he killed Nassana, to save the countless lives she would have put at risk by her future actions, and that's why he willingly signs up to our crew free of charge. The Collectors are killing innocent people, and he sees this as the right thing to do. Once on board, he seeks the most arid part of the ship and sets up quarters.
He seems quite civil.
Yeah, he does seem civil, doesn't he, Edie?
I'm the best thief in the business, not the most famous.
With a new friend on board, it seems a great time to take a look at somebody who I've mentioned a whopping 5 times prior to now. The Master Thief Kasumi Goto, who was originally introduced as a paid DLC pack for the original game. Fortunately, as I've said, all DLC is included in the Legendary Edition, and as such she is able to join us for our adventure regardless. Due to her and the other DLC companion, Zaeed, both being recruited via very brief little introduction chats rather than full-fledged missions, there really hasn't been too much to say about either of them, but that isn't to imply in any way that Kasumi is somehow lesser than her contemporaries. Au contraire, she is actually exceedingly unique. Kasumi Goto is an expert at breaking and entering, a heister through and through who specialises in getting into and out of places unseen and unheard. She once worked alongside a man named Keiji Okuda, her partner in crime and her partner in life. Throughout the years, the two Japanese thieves underwent many misadventures across the stars, rescuing slaves, performing elaborate heists and falling in love. Until Keiji died. In return for signing up for our little suicide squad, Kasumi's one condition was that she wanted to find the grey box that Keiji had stored his memories in before he died. A grey box that had been taken by the business tycoon and criminal entrepreneur, Donovan Hock. Kasumi is surprisingly chatty and fun considering her line of work. She comes across as just full of personality, being really bubbly and giggly in a lot of ways. I genuinely feel as though she stumbled right out of an anime and straight into Mass Effect, and I think that personality goes a long way on our crew considering how stale the human companions oftentimes get accused of being, and it makes her stand out as someone you just really want to know because she's so enticing. This fun-loving personality combined with her talents as a super sneaky mastermind should doubtlessly lead to a really fun loyalty mission. Unfortunately, Kasumi's mission does not disappoint. As the two ladies approach Hock's mega mansion, Kasumi gives Shepard the rundown on what exactly her plan is in regards to this elaborate heist. Shepard is going into the party under the alias of Allison Gunn, a small-time mercenary leader, and she is going to be the human-facing side of the job in her snugly fit dress. Hock is hosting a party full of frankly terrible people giving him gifts. Allison Gunn is donating a statue of Saren, with weapons and armour hidden in the base. Shepard will be entering without them, only having her pistol. She needs to find her way to the statue to obtain her gear and make her way into the vault with Kasumi, who will be dealing with all the hacking and espionage aspects of the job. She lands us down at the mansion and Shepard is introduced to Donovan. Kasumi has set up our cover greatly, but she is asked to remain outside while the commander waltzes in. This isn't exactly according to Kasumi's plan, but she is at least able to turn invisible and talk to us over comms. Everyone in this party is a huckster and a crook. Terrorists, mercenary leaders, violent criminals, and thieves, so socialising with them as a morally paragon Shepard is no doubt going to be interesting. Fortunately, finding the way to the vault is easy work, but the security is very tight, impenetrable according to Kasumi, but regardless she believes she can open it, chat up Hock and get a voice recording, find some DNA to help us through and cut the power to the security grid to make our way inside. And we only have to shoot a couple of guys. The party continues and we make our way into the vault finally. Kasumi disables the cameras while Shepard gears up, and the two find a veritable treasure trove of stolen goods. Statues from the Krogan rebellions, the head of the Statue of Liberty, Michelangelo's David, albeit without the most impressive feature, Egyptian statues, stuffed Rachni, Prothean, Quarian and Turian artifacts, artwork, sculptures, some incredibly rare and powerful SMGs that we decide to take for ourselves, and, as Kasumi said, Keiji's grey box. In spite of all the steps made to try and sneak our way down here, Donovan Hock detects her attempts to tamper with the grey box. As it turns out, he clocked onto Kasumi's presence right away, intending to use the security of the vault to be the perfect place to eliminate Kasumi. Fortunately, this is why Shepard is on board, and we do a very good job of swiftly taking out the Eclipse mercenaries once more. We fight our way through the back rooms of his little underground warehouse, and up to a little loading bay where Hawk is piloting a gunship trying to take us down. Pretty silly, all things considered. We've already taken down a gunship when we recruited Garrus, so we make pretty short work of dealing with him and his wave after wave of mercs he sends our way. It is a pretty tough fight in all fairness, having only Kasumi as a companion and nobody else makes this rough in terms of gameplay. But fortunately, once we've whittled him down enough, Kasumi goes full anime and Attack on Titans her way up to his ship, disabling the shields before doing a full-on superhero landing. Despite the absurdity of what we just witnessed, it means we can make short work of Hawk and his lads, and leave this planet once and for all. On the way back to the Normandy, the two ladies have a bit of a heart-to-heart about the grey box. After all this time, Kasumi finally has a chance to relive her memories of her long-lost lover, which is also full of numerous pieces of encrypted evidence that could lead to a galaxy-wide conspiracy theory implicating the Council and the Alliance of any wrongdoings they have ever done. KG left a message urging Kasumi to destroy the files and move on. Don't make herself a target to be hunted down by spectres for the rest of her life, and simply live a happy and more normal life. She doesn't even necessarily care about the conspiracy all that much though. She just wants to relive their happier memories together. But she has the memories already, really. She lived and experienced all of those times with KG, and even though it would hurt her to lose them, Shepard can convince her to dispose of them and move on. I decide not to, and I'm still not entirely sure if I even made the right decision, but I think I viewed it at the time as wanting Kasumi to have the option to choose how to be happy. The whole thing's pretty muddy all in all, and I really don't know how to feel about it, but that's what I decided to go for. As I said, Kasumi's personality is really great. She's so carefree for the most part, but the emotional backstory really adds a lot of depth to a character that otherwise might arguably not have been worth the original asking price. I don't really use her a whole lot in combat, as she ends up being very fragile for the most part, but I like what she brings to the crew, and the over-the-top nature of her abilities in the cutscenes easily make her a fantastic companion to have along for the journey, even if you can't have full-blown conversations with her on the Normandy like you can with your non-DLC pals.
Shepard, it was not a malfunction. This was a trap.
Back on the Normandy, we get an urgent call from the Elusive Men. The Turian Navy has managed to shoot down and disable a collector ship that is now floating helplessly through space. He wants us on board that ship to learn everything we can about their means and motives before the collectors are able to repair the vessel. Gearing up alongside what are at this point our collectors specialists Miranda and Mordin, and we hop aboard to investigate as to what exactly the collectors are up to. It seems that this is the same ship that attacked Horizon, so it's possible we may be able to find some of the missing colonists where possible. Amid the corpses, a terminal is found that informs Edie of an interesting bit of data. The collectors are observing similarities between themselves and humans, presumably investigating or studying something that fits into their overarching goal. And, most interestingly of all, the collectors are Prothean. The Reapers repurposed the Protheans that they had annihilated and corrupted 50,000 years ago and turned them into their collectors to do their bidding. Is this the plan for the humans they're kidnapping, or something far more sinister? Regardless, it's pretty immediately apparent that the Reapers' corruption of species that made the husks that we saw back on Eden Prime and Horizon, and the corruption that turned the Protheans into the collectors, is all part of the cycle that Sovereign mentioned. This means that no matter what, they need to be stopped. At this point the game allows us to learn a new weapon type, which is great as my Sentinel specialisation for Shepard does greatly limit my weapon choice to just pistols and SMGs. Now we can add shotguns to our repertoire. We also uncover that this ship, in addition to being the one that attacked Horizon, is the same one that destroyed the original Normandy 2 years ago. These collectors are clearly a little bit obsessed, so it's good that we're here to take time to disrupt their plans as much as possible. Miranda does note that the collector bodies seem to all be missing suspiciously, and these suspicions come to fruition when, after patching Edie into the ship, things start to sort of creak and break as Harbinger attempts to overload the Normandy's systems. The squad is raised high into the air and combat ensues while Edie tries to counteract the disruption attempts from the collectors. This combat set piece is really cool. I love the way these platforms move in and the sound they make is brilliant. The whole time we're fighting here, Harbinger is nattering away at us and taunting us, which makes me particularly not fond of him. Fortunately, the squad eliminates all of the collectors including the ones Harbinger is controlling, and we've re-established connection with Edie. She's now the one in control of the platform that we're on, has gathered information on the Omega-4 relay, and discovered that the Turians shooting the ship down was bait from the collectors to get us to come here. She also realises that the Elusive Man was definitely aware of this fact, and there is no way he actually believed the distress call to be genuine. Therefore, it's safe to say that the elusive man once again withheld information from us to get us to do his bidding at great personal risk to ourselves and our crew. Mordin seems to be unsurprised by this fact, but we don't have time to ponder for too long as the collectors are on the move once again and Shepard needs to get out of here. Fortunately, EDI provides directions to follow, and with only minimal collector-based distractions, we manage to shoot our way through the gutty works of this colossal ship and leap onto our shuttle back to the Normandy with not a moment to spare. Joker prepares evasive actions and, unlike last time, dodges the shots perfectly for a while. Together with EDI, he is able to get us to safety and patch us into the elusive man to discuss what happened back there. As expected, he whines about how we took a calculated risk for the greater good, and then he sent us into the trap with the intention of outmaneuvering them and getting out with the data. Shepard disagrees vehemently with his decision. While the risk certainly paid off, he put the lives of the Normandy crew at risk, rather than just tell us the truth and what to expect. Would it really have hurt to have said that he suspected it was a trap but believed in us? Regardless, the data leads him to information about a derelict Reaper floating aimlessly through space, that should contain a necessary upgrade capable of navigating the Omega-4 relay and finding where the collectors came from. This Reaper IFF we're looking for is on board the Reaper orbiting a brown dwarf star. The elusive man has indeed sent a squad to investigate it, but of course they have gone missing, as is the standard for Reapers it seems. The crew is very displeased about what the elusive man pulled back on the collector ship. Even Jacob and Miranda seem to be questioning their loyalties to Cerberus when they're treated as so expendable. But regardless, we're stuck working with him and his information and plans are at least accurate. The last bits of data that we extrapolated from the collector ship is the location as to where exactly the Omega-4 relay will take us. The centre of the galaxy. No planets there, just a massive radioactive black hole effectively. This means that the relay is likely to instantly kill us should we go through it, hence why no other ships have returned from it, and as such leads to this Reaper IFF upgrade being a necessity. Additionally, Shepard and Miranda suggest that having more people, more loyalties and more upgrades to the ship will be beneficial in making sure that things go smoothly, so that seems to be the next logical step to take.
I'm in the middle of some calibrations.
Let's start by tackling the two loyalty missions that primarily take place on the Citadel, starting with Garrus Vakarian, former CSEC officer turned vigilante superhero, calibrator of weapons, Scarface lookalike sharpshooter, our old friend and one of the politest dudes on the crew. We already spoke at length about his personality in the first video, so I'll keep this brief and summarise it. Garrus is friendly, well-spoken, somewhat mild-mannered and arguably naive, being somewhat inexperienced and relatively idealistic, but with a tendency to buckle down and focus on the execution of justice with somewhat of a shoot-first-and-think-later kind of attitude. Last time around, he helped us chase Siren down and deliver justice while saving the Citadel in the process. He also quit his job at CSEC, and we helped finish a previously unsolved case by tracking down a crazed lunatic on Garrus's behalf. He initially considered pursuing the life of a Spectre, but he decided to forego this and instead form his own squad of good guys fighting the good fight, just like Shepard's old crew. Garrus would serve as their enigmatic leader, Archangel, and they worked tirelessly to help the common folk of Omega where and when they could. That was until Archangel was betrayed by one of his loyal squad mates, a Turian gentleman by the name of Sidonis, who accompanied Garrus on a false mission to distract him while the rest of the crew were mercilessly slaughtered. Upon returning to their base, Garrus found almost all of his crew dead or dying, and shortly thereafter discovered that Sidonis had absconded with all of the squad's wealth. Talking to Garrus, it's clear that this experience changed him, hardened him up, and really counteracted some of that softening we did with the Dr. Saleon saga. He's bitter, he wants revenge for what happens, and he has recently learned that Sidonis is on the Citadel. We accompany him on his revenge quest with Thane in tow. We'll talk about him in a bit, and get ready to follow Garrus's lead to locate Sidonis, although with the secret intention to try and talk him down from executing the men. You see, Garrus has sort of fallen back into that same rut that Dr. Saleon put him in. He's blinded by his desire to see justice delivered, but all in all, Sidonis clearly has information to give, and would be better off being sentenced to an endless and monotonous life in prison than being executed. After chatting with Garrus's criminal contact, he directs us to the fallen from Grace cop, Harkin, who, for what it's worth, was the man that once directed us to finding Garrus in the first place, but this time is surrounded by Blue Sun's mercenaries. He is additionally sitting on the information as to where to find Sidonis. We swap out Thane for Zaeed temporarily while we deal with the Blue Suns, and I promise there's a good reason for it as Zaeed is a former associate of them, and we head in all heavily armed and locked and loaded to find Harkin. Fortunately, it doesn't take too long before we find him, although he sets his mercenaries onto us first. A couple of Blue Suns no longer really pose any sort of threat to us, and especially not when we have such powerhouses as Garrus and Zaeed with us. As such, we make short work of his protection, no threat at all really, and find the man. He's holed up ready to take us out. Garrus is seriously considering hurting Harkin in order to get him to talk, which is concerning. But once we take down more of his guys and some mechs and come face to face with Harkin, we're able to convince Garrus not to maim the man, and we convince Harkin to hand over the information on Sidonis without causing any grievous bodily harm. Harkin arranges a meeting between the two men, and he narrowly avoids taking a bullet to the shin due to Shepard's intervention. Garrus is clearly furious about everything that's happened, Shepard even going as far as to worry that Garrus is being changed and overcome by his desire for vengeance and justice. We convince him to let Shepard talk to him while he keeps Overwatch, so that we can have a chance to have him justify his actions and help Garrus to understand what exactly happened back on Omega. Garrus isn't convinced yet, but maybe he'll understand once he hears what Sidonis has to say. Immediately upon meeting, we inform Sidonis as to Garrus' plan and do what we can to keep ourselves between the two Turians. We hear him out. Sidonis was threatened into doing it to save himself or his friends, and he confesses that he believes he chose wrong. He's depressed, he's a broken man who hasn't felt joy since what he did, and Garrus sees the truth. Sidonis is a screw-up and a traitor, but justice has already been served, because he isn't truly living a life anymore, he's just alive. He's a prisoner in his conscience, and Garrus comes around to at least taking the time to think about what happened.
So much easier to see the world in black and white. Grey. I don't know what to do with grey.
You know, I love that quote, and I just like Garrus' quest here. It's kind of like an even more personal retreading of the Dr. Salion stuff that encompasses all of the reasons that people love Garrus. The fact that he and Shepard are always there for each other, and throughout the course of the games you really feel as though the two become the best of friends. I like that this quest gives you the angle of someone going through a dark patch and you can encourage him to pursue or talk him down and get him back to being his regular old self. It's just a neat quest. It's not my favourite loyalty quest though. No, I think that honour would go to the other man whom we are going to help out on the Citadel.
It is difficult. All things worth keeping are.
It wasn't all that long ago that we first recruited this dashing rogue to our cause, and we're already tackling his loyalty mission long before taking a look at Mordin, Grunt, Jack and Jacob. This is partly because, well, we're already at the Citadel so it makes sense, and partly because I really like Thane. If you recall, when we first met Thane he was in the middle of an assassination, one that we possibly complicated. In spite of this, he willingly signed up to our squad pro bono even though he had no reason to do so, explaining to us that he is dying. This much is all indeed accurate. Thane has been diagnosed with a fatal, incurable disease called Kepfel syndrome, and he is unlikely to have more than a couple of years at best to live. Despite this bleak reality, he has maintained content and calm with his situation and devoted his life to his spirituality. Thane is deeply devoted to the old religions of his people, from before the Drell were uplifted and saved from their doomed planet by the Hanar. This religion is rarely held in modern times, with most Drell converting to Hanar or even Asari religious beliefs. This explains his odd behaviour after the assassination, where we saw him begin to pray for his salvation. He prays constantly, praying to the Lord of Hunters to help find his target, praying to the Goddess of Protection when defending somebody, pray to the Goddess of the Oceans and the Afterlife when taking a life. He sees his body and soul as separate entities in a lot of ways, with his body being a tool that can be wielded by someone and used to kill, while his soul remains deeply connected to the spirits. It's an odd belief system, but it certainly helps him sleep at night, and he holds a very romanticised view about the afterlife that makes him very endearing to listen to when he talks about his beliefs. As we've not really interacted with any Drell before this, it's probably worth noting a couple of things about him in that regard, such as his flawless eidetic memory that allows him to recount all details of his life perfectly. Every person he's killed, everyone he's known and loved, he remembers it all. He's also possibly somewhat poisonous to the touch. This eidetic memory conflicts with his spiritual beliefs at times, as while he sees himself as absolved of the sins that he's committed, he still sees every face of those people, and with the news of his diagnosis he undertook a journey of penance, eliminating terrible people from the galaxy, such as Nasana and now the Collectors, to help guide his conscience into the afterlife and towards the ocean. Thane's not really a big talker. Despite his impressive sounding voice, he mostly keeps to himself and enjoys solitude, which has led him to feel quite lonely in recent years and even positing that he believes he may not be mourned when he dies. As such, by the virtue of Shepard talking to him regularly, he warms up and eases very quickly into a friendship with her, where he reveals some very interesting information about his life. When Thane was 6 years old, his parents handed him over to the Hanar to be trained as an assassin. This is due to the deeply tied nature of the Drell and Hanar that has led to their societies becoming intertwined, a feeling of eternal gratitude to the Hanar for saving their species. Many Drell offer themselves to perform tasks that the Hanar do not excel at, chief among which is combat, and so while Thane's situation is a little morbid in some ways, it's likely not entirely uncommon. In spite of this hardship, Thane thrived as an assassin and was quickly considered to be one of the deadliest in the galaxy. This all changed when he had a target in his sights ready to fire from a nearby rooftop, when a Drell woman named Irika stepped in the way of his targeting reticule and defiantly stared him down. Thane's memories of this event possessed him. He had never seen anyone so selfless, brave and kind that he felt a desire to know who this mystery woman was. He tracked her down and introduced himself, finding out that she was working as a researcher studying diseases. Some people had moral objections to her work and Thane defended her in turn. Not really knowing what to make of Thane, Irika decided to show him the same compassion she had shown his former target, spending time with him and getting to know him personally, and the two eventually fell in love. Thane eventually requested to be released from his duties as an assassin, and after his wedding to Irika, he began to truly feel at peace. They had a son together, Kolyat, and while Thane had done his best to work a regular job, the family was struggling. They decided to eventually pursue having Thane work freelance as an assassin, which in addition to being a very unusual sentence to say, brought in a lot more money for them to live comfortably. One freelance job he went on had him take down a gang of Batarian slavers who, after the slaughter, had a few remaining members who devoted their time and effort into tracking Thane down. They never found him, but they did find his home, and they did find Irika. Reminiscing on her death, Thane found a safe place for Kolyat to live far away from him. He wanted to keep his son safe from anyone else who may try to take revenge on him, and he tracked down his wife's killers, eliminating them without mercy. With enough time to reflect on his life, his regrets and the love for his wife and son, Thane devoted himself further to his faith and his career. And then he was diagnosed with Keppel syndrome. After his attempts at atonement led to his encounter with Shepard, he has had time to reflect further, and discuss his feeling with his new friend. He has decided that he wants to cross off the final thing on his bucket list and pay a visit to his son. Unfortunately, he has it on good authority that Kolyat has recently been actively pursuing a life of crime as a hired assassin. Thane removed himself from his son's life to stop his son from making the same mistakes as he did. Seeing now that it has backfired, he wants to protect his son once more. Captain Bailey, the head of C-Sec that we met before, informs us that a local criminal named Mouse was seen talking to a Drell recently. Mouse has made a living selling VIs of Shepard, kinda like an Alexa with Jennifer Hale's voice I guess, and has been noted as a particularly shady character. Mouse recognises Thane as, when he was young, Thane had used him to gather information for him regarding the whereabouts and details of his targets. Despite this further grim reminder of the kind of person Thane once was, his current intentions are noble and we convince Mouse to reveal what he knows. A local crime boss named Elias Kellum has hired Kolyat for a hit job. Thane reflects on his interaction with Mouse, feeling shame at how this petty criminal human nobody knew more about Thane than Kolyat does. Thane is haunted by his past and regrets that he left Mouse too. Thane has held on to a memento of Mouse in spite of the futility of a person with a perfect memory doing so, because he is a sentimental person deep down. In some ways, this could be seen as a reunion between Thane and a different person who sees him as a father figure. Thane has a lot to think about, but as there is no time to delay, we rush back down to Captain Bailey, who awkwardly admits that Elias Kellum is off limits due to a little bit of money running under the table. Despite this, Bailey still has Kellum brought in for interrogation, hoping to stay out of the way in the name of keeping the peace. Shepard and Thane go into the interrogation room with Thane being good cop. Time is short as Elias's lawyer is on his way, so they quickly get to asking questions. Unfortunately, Elias is particularly non-cooperative with us, and his lawyer arrives. All his lawyer really tells him, however, is that he can't do anything when it comes to a Spectre. Shepard is legally allowed to do and say pretty much anything to Elias right now, but since she makes it clear she wants nothing to do with him and just wants information, he spills the beans and directs us to Kolyat's target. An anti-human Turian politician by the name of Joram Tal'Id. It seems highly likely that his campaign is going to be successful in spite of his more or less openly racist policies. Tal'Id is a problematic person, but I think we can all be level-headed enough to admit that murder is bad, and so Shepard and Thane devise a plan to interrupt Kolyat's attempted assassination of Tal'Id. Shepard pursues him from the overhead safety of the catwalks, while Thane slinks in and amongst the shadows by the blessing of the Lord of the Hunters. We keep our peepers on him as much as we can across various sections of the Citadel, through a club overseeing a meeting between him and his mercenary bodyguards. We're interrupted in our skulking by a warehouse worker, but we manage to convince him that we're a health inspector. I mean, just look at how we're dressed. We continue our pursuit and arrive just in time to call Kolyat's name and interrupt the assassination. Tal'Id retreats to his apartment where we find him held at gunpoint by Kolyat. Thane approaches and talks to his son for the first time in years. The whole situation is rough and complicated, and I feel terrible for Thane. C-Sec arrive and we disarm Kolyat, getting Tal'Id out of here. We explain the situation to Kolyat, and Thane reveals to him the truth surrounding the circumstances of his mother's death. Thane blames himself. Kolyat blamed him too for years, and Thane feels nothing but regret. He loves his son, but he knows he's been a bad father. Captain Bailey gives the two Drell a chance to talk things out back at the precinct, and while Kolyat is still under arrest for the attempted assassination, the two are able to hash things out in private. Captain Bailey informs us of some suspicions he has about Thane regarding a Drell cleaning out an entire criminal organisation a few years back, and Shepard poignantly points out how people change, something that Thane has demonstrated throughout this whole saga. It is of my personal belief that the Thane that killed all of those people, the Thane that took revenge for the murder of his wife and used his body as a weapon for destruction, is gone. The Thane we are travelling with right now has more in common with that loving father trying to do his best than he was when he was a younger man, when he was with Erica, and like she had done before, Shepard had smoothed out his edges and made him once more into a good person with good ideals. He just also happens to know the best way to kill a room full of Krogan with a blunt instrument. Thane relays to us, and the captain, that he is proud of the process that he and his son have made, and we are able to convince Bailey to give Kolyat community service so that he can atone for his mistakes. Thane is appreciative of the captain's work and eagerly anticipates reforming a connection to his son. Like I said, I really like Thane. I didn't even intend for the section on him to go on for so long, I just like his story so much. There's a lot of depth and flavour to it that makes him such an interesting, well-rounded and truly heartbreaking character to be around. He's running out of time to make up for his past misgivings, but he's trying his best. I like Thane, and I suspect my Shepard would like him too. It's for this reason of absolutely adoring his story that I almost always have my Shepards pursue a relationship with Thane, and this time is no different. After his loyalty mission, I am able to cement a proper relationship between Shepard and Thane, which I find to be very appropriate due to the nature of the rekindled fire in his heart from spending time with Shepard. He even gives her a cute pet name, Sihar, referring to a warrior angel of the goddess of protection. Time is short for him, but he wants to make the most of it. Now, I don't really know where else I want to talk about this, so before we head back to Ilium, I want to make note of how much more expansive the romance options are this time around. The first game gave us 3 options, while this one gives a total of 6 proper relationships to pursue. There is arguably a slight regression on account of not providing any proper same-sex relationships like the first game allowed between a female Shepard and Liara, but the inclusions of characters like Thane, Jack, and even Garrus and Tali this time as romance options are extremely welcome in my eyes. I love all of these characters in their own ways, but we'll talk more about our romance with Thane more once it's had a chance to develop.
I am a biotic god.
Having safely secured the loyalty of about half of our current crew, Miranda, Kasumi, Garrus and Thane, we've been neglecting the dossiers that the elusive man handed to us. Back on Ilium, we still have an Asari Justicar to meet, so let's go introduce ourselves and continue expanding our roster. One fun little note is that the Asari who directed us towards Nasana has left Ilium without a trace, and we also go around and help out a couple of other people, providing them with information we found in that tower and when helping Miranda. But our journey to meet Samara leads us to meeting an officer of the local law enforcement who immediately fears that our seeking of Samara means she has killed someone in her investigation. While this fear is quite alarming, she explains that it's not entirely unfounded, as all Justicars, Samara included, abide by a very strict code that dictates their life to be devoted to a specific sense of pure justice. If they get even the slightest whiff of somebody bending the rules, a Justicar has full legal authority to punish the wicked. It's pretty hardcore stuff, and arguably puts her only a couple of tiers below Spectres in terms of the legal system. The law enforcer is especially concerned about the relations with other species becoming muddied by a diplomatic incident involving a Justicar killing, for example, a human or a Solarian. It seems that Samara will be a tough nut to crack, but someone with her skill set who seeks to protect the innocent is a very viable candidate for our mission. The officer directs us towards her with fair warning that she is dangerous, and we take a taxi over to her. It seems that the reason Samara is here is to investigate a murder, which, while technically headed by a local detective, has devolved into a full-blown drama. The local police, corrupt businessmen, mercenaries, a dangerous Justicar, and now a Spectre with a wanted criminal and her former C-Sec friend, all loitering around the same crime scene. The victim's former business partner suggests that Eclipse mercenaries are the culprits, and that they're well-known killers and drug dealers on Ilium. He also explicitly states that he's an innocent merchant, but he also seems pretty blasé about the whole ordeal, so that's worth considering as we seek permission from the detective to investigate further. Overall, she is very worried about this whole situation having been blown out of proportion, with Samara and now our appearances making this investigation into a diplomatic situation. And not even because she's actually worried about Samara, no, she actually seems to fully trust the Justicar's code and instincts. But her superiors want her to detain Samara to avoid potential diplomatic risks. As you can imagine, this means that Samara would then have to kill her, per the code. Garrus and Jack wisecrack about our incredulity to the detective's willingness to follow suicidal orders. And, as funny as that is, it does showcase that Samara needs to be removed from the area as quickly as possible. Therefore, per the code, we're probably going to want to solve the case as quickly as possible. She gives some more information to support what we already know. The Eclipse mercenaries are in the local area, the Volus who was murdered may not be entirely clean, and Samara is just up ahead. Upon crossing the police line, we immediately come under fire from the Eclipse, which seems as clear an admission of guilt as any. So after a quick takedown and continuation, we watch Samara in action as she takes down one of the Eclipse leaders.
What was the name of the ship she left on?
Go to hell!
Find peace in the embrace of the goddess.
She absolutely annihilated her and greets us cordially. Shepard questions how quickly she was able to turn off her bloodlust, but Samara reassures that this is, of course, per the code. Samara explains that she is here seeking a dangerous fugitive, and that these Eclipse mercenaries smuggled her off-world at some point. She is persuaded by the idea of joining us on our mission, but not until she knows where Eclipse sent the fugitive. It is at this point that the detective informs us that her arm has been sufficiently twisted, and she has to place Samara in custody to avoid a diplomatic incident. We know, per the code, that Samara will not be detained, but she reassures that she is able to allow for one singular day to be detained before she has to escape. Kind of a weird, arbitrary sounding rule, but okay, this means that there's a few things we have to consider. Samara won't leave the planet until she finds this evidence. The detective legally has to detain Samara. Samara has to break out per the code. Shepard wants Samara to join her. If we reverse engineer these facts, there is a solution that leads to Samara joining us and the detective continuing to live. Shepard has to find the evidence before one day has passed, or Samara will kill the detective. Do that, and Samara joins the Suicide Squad. Easy. Before going off to holding, Samara suggests that Shepard seek out the victim's former business partner and squeeze some more information out of him. The merchant is fortunately scared enough about the Justicar's presence, which seems to be very justified after what we've seen so far, and explains to us that he may have done a little bit of smuggling for a biotic ability boosting chemical that is also extremely toxic. He sold this toxic chemical to the mercenaries who, upon realizing that they'd been duped, exacted revenge. Obviously Samara can't really know about this, or pretty much every party involved dies, so we acquire the Volus' pass card to enter the Eclipse hideout and enter to try and find out where they store the records of their people smuggling. We have fought more than enough Eclipse by now that this is pretty much a walk in the park. They pose little threat, and when we find one cowering behind a desk having regretting her life choices that led her to this situation, we are able to get some information out of her. It would seem that the person the Eclipse smuggled off-world is a rare breed of Asari called an Ardat Yakshi, an exceptionally dangerous woman who is capable of great chaos. That's bad. Regardless, there's still very little they can actually do to stop us from finding out where they sent this Ardat Yakshi to, so we make our way through a bunch more idiots, including a gunship they sent after us, and meet with another Volus.
I am a biotic god.
This absolute force of nature is clearly elevated to another level of being. Or he's probably just high. Fortunately, at least, our biotic god here worked for the Volus' merchants, and has been more or less discarded without a care. The biotic god is feeling vengeful and full of wrath, wanting to take the Eclipse down single-handedly. Whilst I no doubt believe wholeheartedly in his prowess, we instead give him a gentle nudge and convince him to have a little kip while we, instead, march into the belly of the beast. By this point we've already uncovered a shipping manifest showing that the merchants are criminals, which will certainly save the detective a headache or two, but the leaders of this band of Eclipse mercenaries still stand between Shepard and the location of the Ardat Yakshi. At least their captain admits to how stupid this whole operation has been for her. It's just a bit of a shame that this admittance ends up being her last words. With her out of the way, we head up to the terminal and find the information Samara is looking for, the ship that the Ardat Yakshi was smuggled off of Ilium via. Before we are able to return, the Volus merchant pipes up asking us to hand over the evidence we found in exchange for a great sum of money. We decline his proposal, dobbing him in for his wrongdoings and handing over all the evidence to the detective and Samara. The murder is more or less solved and all criminal activity has been summarily dealt with, including the Eclipse mercenaries being eliminated and the Volus' smuggling being documented. We reveal to Samara that we're aware of her search for the Ardat Yakshi, which impresses her greatly, which I suppose is good as the last thing I want to do is upset her at this stage. Before we depart, she states that she must have us undergo a brief swearing-in ceremony between the two of us that means, per the code, she is now bound to our command instead of the code for the duration of our travels together. Neat. That means I can commit all the crime I want and she cannot legally stop me. Well, I mean, I'm still not going to be committing any crimes, but this knowledge will probably lift a huge weight off of Thane, Kasumi and Jack's shoulders. Mostly, I'm just glad to be done with this whole sordid investigation. It's a bit of a weird mission. I mean, I think I like it. I like Samara, but the whole Justicar code thing is pretty hard to wrap your head around entirely, probably at least partly because you only ever really get the snippets that Samara is willing to explain, which makes her a pretty unusual companion to have around. Nevertheless, she is perhaps one of the most powerful biotics that we have come across, maybe even giving Jack a run for her money, so she is more than welcome when it comes to fighting the Collectors. With that, we have one more dossier to finish. We just acquired a powerful biotic, so let's go rekindle our relationship with a talented engineer.
I wish I'd joined you back on Freedom's Progress.
Formerly known by the name Tali'Zorah Naraya while she was on her pilgrimage, she has now adopted the name of her new home ship aboard the flotilla, going by the name of Tali'Zorah Vasanima. We already had one run-in with her, so it'll be nice to see her again with another familiar face in our midst once again. We touch down on the planet that the elusive man has tracked her to with Garrus. Mordin is here too, and we progress onwards to find what Tali is doing here and to see if we can help her in any way. The planet is desolate, barren, and rampant with Geth. It doesn't take long until the squad has a run-in with them. It's been a while since we've taken out a bunch of Geth, so it's quite nice and nostalgic to be taking them on again. They've received a few combat upgrades to match with the overall improvements made to the gameplay this time around, and they're really great to fight. What's not so great is the news that the Quarian squad are mostly dead, the survivors pinned down by the Geth and one of their soldiers requesting our backup due to the extreme radiation of the local sun blocking off-world communication. He also informs that Tali is alive and safe, holed up researching in a building further ahead. The Geth drop off some more units, taking out even more of the Quarian soldiers, and we have to blast our way through the building and into another firefight. Whilst gunning down hordes of robots, we have to duck in and out of cover to protect ourselves from the solar radiation. We also find a few journals left by Tali that document what she's doing here, some sort of mission to observe dark matter readings and from this concerningly rapidly aging star that she believes to have some sort of significance to the Geth and possibly by extension, the Reapers. Once we get a bit further up ahead, we find a communication device and patch through to Tali. It seems almost all of the soldiers with her have died, but she is at least reassured by Shepard's arrival. She directs us towards her and her data expressing its importance. She knows that the man we spoke to earlier, Kalrigar, and at least some of his squad are still alive due to overhearing gunfire. But she also knows that time is short. She expresses sincerely that she hopes Shepard can keep her friends alive, and we push on ahead into another Geth firefight. We rendezvous with Kalrigar, who, in addition to being very confused by our being here, proposes a plan to take out the remaining Geth and get through to Tali. Kalrigar has been injured, and with his weak Quarian immune system, he's not doing too great, but he is still willing and ready to put his life on the line for this mission. Despite this, I propose that Shepard takes on all of the risk of the mission by keeping Kalrigar out of the limelight to recover from his injury and potentially oncoming infection. With a brave battle cry, Kila Salai, we punch a hole in the Geth defences, taking their Colossus down and making our way to Tali, with Kalrigar still happy, healthy, and alive. Tali expresses that this mission has been a disaster, but she knew that she had to be a part of it. She regrets declining our previous request to have her join us, but she felt she had to do it in order to get the information from this planet. The admirals of the flotilla ordered this operation, costs be damned, but Tali worries that the price was too high. Despite this, she is relieved to have obtained the data of dark energy somehow aging the star rapidly, which suggests some sort of interference from external forces. With the mission now done, Tali decides that her and her team have sacrificed more than enough for the admirals for the time being, so she sends the data and Kalrigar off to the flotilla while rejoining us back on the Normandy at last. With us now having both Garrus and Tali back aboard the Normandy, the place is really starting to feel like home. She still doesn't trust the whole Cerberus side of it all, but she is still our friend, and she is willing to do everything to help us take out the Collectors. And at least she's still giddy about the mechanics of the Normandy, even if she despises the idea of having an AI on board.
I noticed the fish tank up in your cabin.
With almost all of our ground team squad mates and companions acquired, certainly all the ones that we have dossiers for, our next few overarching goals are going to be focused on securing all of their loyalties. Next up will be Mordin and Grunt, who want to go to Tuchanka, the Krogan homeworld, somewhere we will no doubt bump into yet another old friend. But before that, I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about the Normandy SR2 and the crew that the Elusive Man has provided us with for this outing. We'll start with a fairly familiar face, Dr. Chakwa, or possibly Dr. Chakwas, who accompanied Shepard in her battle against Saren. She's more or less the same old doctor who patched up our crew in the previous adventure, with the key difference being that she's no longer working with the Alliance. She was on board our ship when the Collectors destroyed it and was able to evacuate safely. She transferred through to Mars for a short while but missed the excitement of life on a spaceship, causing her to eventually accept a contract from Cerberus to serve aboard their new Normandy. After being told the details of the mission, she accepted under the precondition that she was serving Commander Shepard, not Cerberus, and serves without regrets in this position. She does also actually have a little tiny quest to secure her a bottle of brandy, as she had a super expensive bottle that she was going to open on a special occasion, but it was destroyed along with the original Normandy without her ever having a good enough reason to open it. After finding a bottle of this brandy on Omega, Shepard brings it back and the two of them pop it open to have a drink and talk about their pasts. She reminisces about serving with Jenkins, rest in peace, and Kaidan, and mentions that another part of her signing on to Cerberus was not just her loyalty to Shepard, but because she helped Joker out a lot with his disease off screen in our previous outing together, and she wanted to continue serving in that role. Shepard and Chakwa enjoy reminiscing like this, and the two promise to continue this tradition of sharing a bottle every year going forwards. She can also offer us a method of fixing Shepard's facial scars, although the scarring does go away and becomes almost unnoticeable if you're following a more Paragon-focused playthrough like myself. They do become a lot more intense the more questionable and downright evil actions you perform, however, so while I ignore the cure for the scarring due to its redundancy, it's worth considering if you're intending to be reprehensible. Engineer Adams has not returned for this outing, having declined Cerberus's operation. Tali misses him somewhat, but he has been replaced by younger and highly intelligent engineers by the names of Gabriella Daniels, aka Gabby, and Kenneth Donnelly. Anytime you pay a visit to them down in the engineering bay, they're bickering like an old married couple, having been friends for a very long time. They went through education together, graduating from the same uni, and both went to serve aboard a large Alliance vessel that fought against Sovereign back at the Citadel. After the Reapers were summarily dismissed as poppycock by the Council and Alliance, Kenneth kicked off and almost got into a lot of trouble, teetering on the edge of a court-martialing. This caught the attention of the Elusive Man, and he offered him to work for Cerberus, which Kenneth accepted, albeit with Gabby insisting that she get to tag along. The two of them detail a few engineering issues they're having, requiring some couplings to be purchased to fix the issue, and for helping out, Kenneth invites Shepard to play some poker. In terms of personalities, Gabby is pretty enthusiastic about a lot of stuff, but she mostly acts as the straight man in the comedy double act that is her and Kenneth, since he is something of a rambunctious horn dog who is overly fixated on his attractions to the various women in the crew, Tali, Jack and Miranda included, which draws much ire from Gabby. Despite their bickering, they get along well and do an admirable job filling the shoes left by Adam's departure. Similarly to Adams not returning, Navigator Presley is for some reason not able to join us this time around either. Yeah, I can't quite remember the reason for this off the top of my head, however, but regardless, Cerberus has acquired a replacement in Kelly Chambers, the Normandy's new yeoman. Upsettingly, her hair was changed between the original and legendary editions of the game, and not for the better in my opinion. It is actually quite bothersome to me as I prefer the original by miles. But the personality is unchanged. I think the word I'll go for to describe Kelly is plucky. She's in charge of handling navigation as well as providing counselling and psychological evaluations of the crew. As such, she is able to provide some insights into the mental states of members of the crew, informing of the potential dangers that people like, for example, Grunt and Jack may bring to the ship. She is also, unlike Chakwa and the engineers, pretty loyal to Cerberus, but doesn't necessarily reflect the anti-alien reputation that the organisation is often attributed, being just as compassionate and respectful of the opinions and psychological states of all of the non-human crew as she is to the human crew. As the game progresses, she eases to Shepard's command and eventually the two become more chatty. She requests being referred to as just Kelly rather than Yeoman Chambers, and eventually the two can have a private dinner in the captain's quarters. At this point, the game provides the option to romance her, sort of, regardless of Shepard's gender, although this doesn't provide any achievements for romancing a character, and it actually has some pretty dire consequences for Kelly in the third game. Instead, I opt for the better option of requesting that she feed my fish, so that I no longer have any risk of losing them by forgetting to feed them before a ground mission. Phew, thank God. Mess Sergeant Rupert Gardner is next, and he cooks food for the crew, and he's loyal to Cerberus a lot more than anyone else, Kelly included, and yeah, I'll be honest, I think I forget about this guy's existence a lot. I'm not sure I'm alone in that either. I think he has a lot less unique dialogue and interesting conversations than most of the other crew, and while I don't think he's a terrible character or anything, it's a lot like Engineer Adams was for me in the first game, where I really just don't have a lot to say. He has a brief quest where you can acquire some high quality meal ingredients for him, and a few people including Kenneth, Gabby and Kasumi will all comment on the improved meal quality. Gardner does not appear outside of Mass Effect 2, so now we can all collectively go back to forgetting who he is. I'm now pretty sure that's everyone else. So let's talk about Joker and Edie now. Joker has returned as the pilot of the Normandy, and he's clearly in love with the upgrades that Cerberus has made for it. Personality-wise, he's more or less the same, except perhaps even more loyal than he was before, whether it's as a thank you to Shepard for saving his life against the Collectors, or just because he loved working with Shepard and helping to take down Saren. What's important is that having Joker, Chakwa, Garrus and now Tali on board gives a real sense of continuity to this game that manages to keep in a balance where you have these 10 brand new squad mates to recruit and replacements for almost all of the crew, but these familiar faces all give a real sense of belonging to the new Normandy such that even if it's in Cerberus' colours, it still feels homely. I'm still a big Joker fan, but for the most part he's still just a jovial, enthusiastic and slightly cocky, while slightly sympathetic character who is unendingly reliable and great to be around. ED is the only real complication in this, adding a new dynamic to Joker that saves him from being too repetitive, in that he really does not approve of having ED monitoring his actions. Numerous times throughout the course of the game the two are arguing about trivial stuff, and Joker is clearly distrustful of having a ship that can talk back to him. ED states that she is only trying to understand human behaviour throughout their interactions. ED is incredibly helpful in researching and understanding things that would otherwise have been a great struggle. Take back on the Collector ship for example, that would have been a nightmare without ED there to save the day. Having her around is great, and Joker does eventually begin to warm up to her throughout the course of the story, culminating in the part of the game where the ship is attacked by the Collectors, and then Joker and ED have to learn to trust each other when putting everything back online, resulting in Joker and ED forming a much tighter bond, with Joker even starting to refer to ED using actual pronouns as opposed to just calling her it. Shepard can even imply to Joker that she believes he is flirting with ED, to which they both vehemently disagree, but regardless of how that may progress in the future, it is good to see them getting along finally. But we're not there yet, and for now the two of them are still at arm's length, serving as loyal members on the Normandy SR2. The new crew is all around pretty good, serving a similar purpose to the original one where they don't necessarily need to be fleshed out too much, but perhaps even more so than in the original, having a splendid array of character quirks that makes each of them bring a little bit more personality and flavour to the crew. I like all the new and old faces of the ship, especially Edie and Kelly, and travelling with them is a real treat in my opinion.
I just want to kill something.
While we were off meeting with assassins, justicars and discussing our friends old and new, our Krogan son Grunt is struggling a little bit with some changes his body is going through. He's angry all the time, he's restless, anxious, struggling to keep his emotions in check, and he's really confused about why. Edie suggests paying a visit to the Krogan homeworld, Tuchanka, and speaking to a Krogan clan leader about what's wrong with Grunt and how to help him. Luckily, Shepard is friends with a Krogan clan leader, so it's about time we paid a little visit to our old buddy, not Wrex. Technically, if I had killed Wrex, then we would have been visiting his brother not Reeve. But I kept Wrex alive, and as expected, he is over the moon to see Shepard paying him a visit, even dismissing his present duties to focus on greeting his old friend, commenting on how happy he is that she is alive. As stated, Wrex has managed to elevate his position to becoming the clan leader of Clan Erdnot, with his time and knowledge on Vermeer being the definitive proof he needed to the theoretical possibility of a genophage cure, something that could, once and for all, allow the Krogan to breed at a normal rate and put aside their squabbling. With Wrex's proof of the possibility, he returned to his home and quickly became the leader of the clan, bucking many Krogan traditions along the way, which is viewed as controversial by some of his contemporaries. Despite this, he's still as physically and mentally strong as ever, and he reminisces fondly on his time on the Normandy. He has big plans for the Krogan, and he's very idealistic with incredible goals in mind, but his new duties as an overall peacekeeper among the clans and leader of the biggest Krogan alliance in a long time mean that he's more or less stuck on Tuchanka for the time being. He'd love to come aboard and gallivant around the galaxy with us again, but for now we're going to have to focus on why we're here, to help Grunt figure out what exactly is going on with him. Upon finding out about the unusual circumstances of Grunt's creation, Wrex is impressed by Okir's work, but also pleased to hear of the old Warlord's death. He then has to explain that, well, how do I put this?
Puberty ritual.
Oh, thank you so much, Mordin. Yeah, this is a coming-of-age story for Grunt, and as with most things Krogan, it involves an excessively violent ceremony to undergo his, manhood. Wrex directs the young Krogan to his clan's shaman, who can instruct him on how to go about this ritual and, if successful, be inducted into Clan Urdnot. If he fails, well, it's best not to fail. On the way to the shaman, we get to meet some of the friendly faces of Tuchanka and discover just how tenuous this whole alliance really is. I don't envy Wrex, so we do our best to help everyone out as much as we can, and provide them with anything they request to help our friend's job become easier. After making the proper introductions to the local populace, Shepard and Grunt meet the shaman. He is in talks with the Krogan who was previously talking to Wrex, and was very upset about the whole rite of passage thing for Grunt. Due to his protests, Grunt must announce his allies to accompany him for the ritual, and so it falls on Shepard and the Normandy crew to declare themselves as his Krent, his comrades in arms. This guy is pretty annoying, and clearly making things difficult for Rex's alliances, but he is able to be talked down, showing the full strength of the Normandy crew and making them fully eligible for Grunt to have us tag along, as well as upsetting this other Krogan, which does make the shaman really happy. We take Garrus along with us, and the shaman directs us to the ruins of the last great Krogan city that fell during the Krogan rebellions, when the genophage was deployed. He doesn't know necessarily what we're going to be up against, but it is clear that we're going to be doing a heck of a lot of fighting, and so fight we shall. Varen, the little space doggy's big alien wildlife called Clixon. After fighting off a few waves of these, the gang find themselves face to face with a gigantic Threshermaw, the giant alien worm-like creatures who are capable of taking down the Mako. Shepard has a pistol. This is a very long and engaged fight, but fortunately with Grunt's combat prowess and Garrus' sharpshooting skills, we're eventually able to unload enough firepower into the Threshermaw to take it down. It's at this point that the ritual is interrupted by the arrival of that pesky Krogan chief who was causing so much trouble before. He isn't happy about Grunt's success in the ceremony one bit, displeased at his synthetic nature and alliance with humans. He relents, however, that because Grunt was created by Okeer, a Krogan, he is willing to see Grunt for his true strength and offers him a chance to join his clan. This guy obviously wants nothing to do with Grunt really. He just wants him to be a powerful weapon after seeing him take down the Threshermaw. Grunt doesn't want to be a weapon, however. He wants to be Krogan, to be equal, and so a firefight ensues. It's not the first Krogan army we've taken down, and upon returning to the shaman, he praises Grunt for his combat prowess in taking down the Threshermaw and the bothersome clan leader, provides Grunt with a weapon and offers him a choice of battlemaster to serve under, to which Grunt chooses to serve under Shepard. And with that, Grunt has learned of Krogan customs and truly become a man. He's able to be calm, at peace, and to serve us dutifully and learn from us for the remainder of our mission. He's still aggressive, but he's also learning, and he'll no doubt figure it out by the end of it, and I suspect that he and Shepard will finish this journey as friends, just like she did with Wrex. After all, we're friendly with Clan Urdnot, and as such it shouldn't be an issue to fight alongside the newly appointed man that is Urdnot Grunt.
I'm the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian. I'm quite good at genetics as a subset of biology because I am an expert, which I know is a tautology. My xenoscience studies range from urban to agrarian. I am the very model of a scientist Solarian.
Whilst we're here on Tuchanka, it would be remiss not to help out Mordin with his issues too. But first let's rewind a little bit and get to know our Solarian scientist friend. We found him when he was working out of a small medical clinic in the middle of a quarantined area infected with an unknown plague. He also developed a method of counteracting the Collector's paralysing agent, has ways to create and apply new technologies in and around the Normandy, and has a very interesting past for a scientist. Mordin is in his mid to late 30s, which for a Solarian is actually quite old as they tend not to live too long beyond the age of 40. This is pretty much the primary explanation for his, and indeed, most Solarian speech being so fast-paced and urgent. Mordin tends to make his sentences as snappy and short as possible, omitting words or non-critical information to make his intentions as clear as possible, to an extreme extent that sometimes makes following his fast speech confusing. Much like our old acquaintance Captain Kirahe, Mordin served as part of the Solarian Special Task Group, STG for short, in a team that focused on studying potential population growths and variations in the Krogan genophage, with the additional task of creating methods of preventing Krogan repopulation in the future should the genophage fail in some way. Upon discovering that some Krogan were actually evolving to overcome the genophage, Mordin's team made the decision to create a new second genophage that would continue to limit Krogan reproduction. In a botched mission to deploy it, he was injured, resulting in his facial damage and his right horn being missing. Once the mission was over, the team disbanded, and although the project was kept secret, Mordin was conflicted with his decision and buried himself further into his love of scientific study, while also taking the time to find religion. He never managed to stick to the whole religion thing, and struggling to find any actual peace in it, it led him to found his clinic on Omega. As pointed out before, he's very unique as far as a doctor goes, as he was more than capable of defending himself from intruders, a very useful skill set to have on Omega, and the life never really suited him. He also made regular trips to Tuchanka during this time to monitor the effects of his genophage, because he believed that somebody else might have gotten it wrong, and because he believed that not facing his own decisions would make him a coward. After the whole plague issue was solved, he hopped aboard to help out Shepard, showcasing his wide set of skills in combat, science, and musical theatre. He also gives advice about Commander Shepard's romantic interests, in this instance Thane, suggesting potential medical advice for interspecies relationships. Apparently, Thane's dagger might be hallucinogenic. Groovy. At some point, Mordin informs that one of his old assistants, Malon, has been captured on Tuchanka. For any Solarian, it's not exactly the safest planet to be on, but one who helped to design and distribute an upgrade to the genophage is likely to suffer tenfold. As such, while we're already on Tuchanka, it seems rude not to take the time to investigate Malon's whereabouts. Wrex points us in the direction of his chief scout, who says that another Krogan clan is holding Malon hostage. After making our way there, we find the clan holed up in an old hospital, filled with wildlife, mercenaries that include a few Vorcha, and a bit further in, some bodies mangled from experimentation to cure the genophage. Mordin is appalled by the usage of live subjects, stating that he insisted on never doing tests on species capable of calculus, which is a pretty fun way of referring to sentient life. He also notes that whoever did this experimentation is on the right track to finding a cure for the genophage, even if they are a ways off. And while he is still morally conflicted over the whole thing, he despises the methods of this cure research, something I think we can all agree on, and so we head further in to find the cause, and if Malon has anything to do with this. Unsurprisingly, he does have something to do with this, as the Krogan here are not only using his work to fuel their experimentation with the intention of both saving their species and, additionally, starting a second Krogan rebellion. Again, I think we can all agree that that would be bad, so we do what we can to put a stop to this, defeating the Krogan clan in self-defense and finding some of the research on Mordin's modified genophage. He concerningly takes a lot of pride in his work, defending it once again, seemingly not wanting to take responsibility for his involvement in the cruel conditions pervading all aspects of Krogan life. Maybe it's denial, maybe he really believes it, but it's clear he struggles mentally with a lot of his life choices, justifying the genophage as us or them. And while he admires Wrex's attempts of making a united Krogan allied government, at this point in time he still refuses to accept his own shortcomings in regards to the genophage. He gets especially argumentative upon seeing a dead Krogan female under wraps on a table, almost starting to blame himself for this experimentation taking her life, as, after all, it was done as a result of his work. He compares his beliefs to Hinduism somewhat, and he's clearly hurt, but he still justifies his actions with the fear of more Krogan war if the Krogan were cured. He's maybe not entirely wrong at the time, but Shepard still takes the time to reprimand him. Could Wrex's unified Krogan government be the solution to lasting peace if a genophage cure could be deployed? Could Grunt's unique biology and powerful genetics sway things? Mordin has a lot to think about over the future of the Krogan and his own conscience, seeing so much suffering and pain in this hospital. Suffering and pain that we summarily make the chief of this clan answer to. Past all the Krogan, Mordin finds the person behind the studies. Malon. Both men make very strong arguments about what's going on here. Malon wants to cure the genophage to help the Krogan in the long run, but he's also killing and torturing live subjects to do so. Malon's words finally cut through to Mordin, and his clear guilt over the situation and wish to fix things makes Mordin reflect on their experiments. Malon is able to see the big picture that Mordin and his simulations were too narrow-sighted to see. Malon also says that he chose not to use Clan Urdnot to host his experiments due to seeing Wrex as too soft. And after hearing everything that Malon has to say to justify his atrocities, Mordin holds him at gunpoint. Shepard has one last opportunity to talk him down from killing Malon, to leave him and go and live his life, suggesting he open up a clinic on Omega. Before he leaves, Malon pleads to Mordin one last time to reconsider his stance on the ethics of the genophage, to use his brilliant mind to end it. Mordin remarks, not like this, indicating that he is starting to reconsider his stance, seeing the variables and considering for the first time the idea of curing the genophage. As he goes to delete Malon's research data, he hesitates and asks for Shepard's input. She urges him to help the Krogan, to stop the loss of lives and wasted potential on Tuchanka, and Mordin complies, stating that it may still take years, but he is beginning to consider the idea of looking for a cure. He's still conflicted, but I'm happy in believing that he's making the right choice. We make it back to Clan Urdnot, finding out that killing the Threshermaw has made Grunt and Shepard into desirable mates for the Krogan, and that everything we've done has helped make Wrex's life easier. We've done more or less everything we can for the Krogan at this point, so, with Grunt operating at full strength and Mordin coming to accept his mistakes, we leave and head off to start helping out some of our other companions with their requests.
The galaxy's gonna be a lot emptier when I'm done.
After being abducted by Cerberus as an infant, Jack, referred to in her youth as Subject Zero and often going by the pseudonym of Jacqueline Naught, is a deeply troubled and arguably psychotic woman who has had a harder life than perhaps anyone deserves. She was kidnapped due to her immediate aptitude for biotic abilities after, much like Kaidan had been, being exposed to Element Zero in the womb. She was told growing up that her mother had passed away from complications related to the EZO exposure and, due to how quickly she adapted incredibly powerful biotic abilities, became the prime subject of the Cerberus facility that she grew up in. As with any project that the Elusive Man backs, it was a top-quality experimental facility with top-tier security and truly repugnant human experimentation going on within, as you may have garnered from the fact that the pride and joy of the facility were the awful things they were doing to an infant. Everything they did made her even more and more powerful at a consistent rate, becoming more powerful than even most Asari at using her biotics. All the other kids there grew to hate Jack, as they knew that any suffering that they endured was done in the name of making her even stronger, not aided by the fact that the only time she really interacted with the other kids was when she was forced to kill them in gladiatorial combat to make her love killing. Jesus Christ, Cerberus was clearly problematic and bad all this time, sure, but, I mean, good lord, if you want the full details on everything that she endured, I really recommend looking it up or, playing the games, because it's actually pretty horrifying in a lot of ways. I just feel bad for her. She never really got to have a regular life and it all just sucks. Eventually, all of the other kids were able to riot and attack the guards of the facility, causing massive damage that caused the security systems to fail, releasing Jack from captivity, and she was so powerful that the whole facility was more or less completely annihilated in an instant, although she has very little memory of this incident. As an escaped fugitive from the law now, Jack went on a series of crime sprees across the cosmos and led a life of piracy, involvement in gangs, vandalism of entire space stations, and a brief stint as a cultist that led to her adopting the unique shaved head look. It suits her, but man, her life after the facility is almost as bad. We know that eventually she was caught and locked up by the Blue Suns along the way and had an even more miserable and horrifying time there until Shepard showed up and actually showed her some compassion. As she grows to accept that Shepard is just genuinely wanting to do good, Jack opens up and talks about her past and even her future, justifying her anger towards Cerberus and her distrust of Miranda and, indeed, people in general. She expresses a desire to revisit the facility she grew up in after looking through her files, and decides that she wants to do an Ashley Williams to it, if you catch my drift. We take her over there and find that Krogans and Vorcha have begun scavenging this area at some point. There's plenty of logs that unveil the truth of this place. The facility may have been a rogue operation not sanctioned by Cerberus as a whole, although that certainly doesn't exonerate or justify any of it, of course, and that Jack may have been responsible for even more damage during the riots than she had initially believed. Venturing further in and taking out more mercenaries, it's discovered she indeed seemingly killed just about everybody in the facility when she escaped, even the other subjects, many of whom were hoping to seek her out for protection. Before we can ponder too much on this, we come up against one of the leaders of these Krogan. His boss orders him to kill us, but I don't really feel like being dead right now, so I decide to take him out and continue on to Jack's cell. Inside, the leader of the Krogan is revealed to be a regular human man, who it turns out grew up in the facility alongside Jack. He seemingly lost it a wee bit, ranting about restarting the facility or something, but in spite of her immediate visceral reaction to this statement, we convince Jack not to shoot him and to just let him go, with the caveat that he's obviously not going to start the facility up again because that is insane. Jack reminisces on her life in this room, thinking about all the painful memories while we plant the bomb. Feeling bad for her, we elect to leave this planet and return to the Normandy. Aboard the shuttle, Jack is fiddling with the detonator, perhaps conflicted about the whole thing, but Shepard gives her the go-ahead and she blows the facility sky high. For such a violent and dangerous character, her loyalty mission is pretty calm and almost blasé, with very little actual violent threat or anything going on. It's not my favourite by any means, but I do think it juxtaposes the temperament of Jack greatly. She's an odd character. I can't imagine any actual person would feel particularly comfortable being around her, but in the guise of fiction she poses as one of the most complex and unique characters in the game, certainly up there with people like Mordin and Thane in how much she makes you go Back aboard the Normandy, she's having a bit of an argument with Miranda over the morals of Cerberus. She's peeved about the whole, kidnapped and grew up as a guinea pig thing, and Miranda is trying to justify it for some godforsaken reason. We defuse the situation calmly and get level-headedness to prevail, but for what it's worth, Jack was totally in the right on this. Poor thing. Regardless, we've managed to attain her loyalty now, so let's take a look at the other person beginning with J, if you even remember who that was.
It's your call, Commander. Whatever you decide, we're with you.
Remember this guy? Yeah, don't worry if you didn't. He's just been sort of loitering around ever since Omega for the most part. I've always thought it's pretty unjust as to just how much people refer to Kaidan as being bland and uninteresting as far as companions go for Mass Effect, because I personally disagree. I mean, he's not the most exciting, sure, but I think it's hard for me not to compare him to Jacob. Okay, so Jacob joined the military, served as part of a special investigations group called the Corsairs that functioned outside the Alliance to allow for dodgier missions to be performed, and was eventually assigned to Eden Prime. He witnessed a Geth attack there 2 years ago and eventually quit the Alliance and ran into Miranda. The two of them got along swimmingly and he signed up for Cerberus to help humanity, but remained unimpressed by some of their actions. He's basically the more dispassionate and less devoted counterpart to Miranda, I guess. He doesn't really like Cerberus all that much, he just likes the idea of Cerberus. As such, he pretty quickly falls into line of preferring Shepard's command over the elusive men's. But he still maintains a positive relationship with Miranda after having worked on Shepard's revival together. The other notable thing about Jacob is that he's unintentionally really funny. Throughout the game, he and Miranda will offer two options to you on how to proceed. What's funny is that in each and every single situation, the advice offered by Miranda is great advice that makes a lot of sense, while Jacob's suggestions almost always inevitably lead to one or more of your companions dying. It's impressive that he manages to fumble the bag every single time, and in a way it's his most admirable trait. Beyond that, he gets along pretty well with most of the crew. Kasumi has a crush on him and he doesn't trust Thane, but yeah, he remains inoffensive and never devolves into an argument with anyone like Miranda just did with Jack. After Horizon, he reveals to us that he discovered that his father, missing, presumed dead, has possibly had a distress call sent from the missing ship that he was serving on. Jacob encourages us to take a look. Yeah, okay Jacob, but I've got my eye on you. Can't have you suggesting any profoundly stupid plans resulting in mass death now, can we? Landing down on the planet, the ship in question has indeed crashed on something of an island paradise planet, mostly intact. The ship's onboard VI is just in front of us. We chat it up a bit and find what little evidence we can, including evidence that the captain died in the crash and Jacob's dear old man was made the acting captain. The distress beacon seemingly was set up 1 year after the crash but wasn't activated until almost 9 years later. And then ingesting the native plants makes people stupider. We move on ahead and find some survivors ranting about a saviour from the sky, stop her from being ambushed by some hunters and follow her directions to an all-female camp of survivors who all look terrified of Jacob. We look around trying to find out what's going on and find out that the local food stores are completely spoiled, and that they've probably been ingesting the local plants. The ones that, again, damage your mental functions. We find out that the crew was segregated shortly after the crash, with the officers hoarding all the food and forcing the rest to eat the dangerous plants. All of the officers were killed within a few weeks of the beacon being set up 9 years ago. All male crew members died or were exiled within a year of crashing, and all the women were assigned to the officers as property. So, remember how Jacob's dad was made the acting captain? Well, very clearly the man is a colossally terrible person, and Jacob intends to inform him of such, which is fortunate as he comes over the PA system to encourage us to allegedly rescue him from his supposed captors. Well, since his story is so believable, why don't us dashing rogues come up and save Jacob's dadsel in distress? His automated mechs start attacking us, he blames it on his crew of course, and we ascend the hill to find him still pretending to be panicked and friendly. He doesn't even recognise his own son. He claims that his crew were insane, but it seems he's the one who really went mad with power. Obviously, not one person believes a single word coming out of this man's mouth, about survival or comfort or whatever. He just wanted a taste of authority and kingship, just gallivanting around like Henry VIII and causing trouble for no discernible reason other than because he was enjoying his life. It wasn't until the exiled men had managed to regain their faculties and organise an offensive against the captain that he felt compelled to try and escape his kingly duties. Jacob disowns his father after hearing all of his excuses and lies, and we have him arrested on Alliance authority while we do what we can to get the people out of here and into recovery safely. The elusive man claims to actually have known nothing about Jacob's dad, and Miranda in fact comes forward to claim responsibility for helping her friend achieve closure. She may have some problematic views regarding Cerberus, but what's amazing is that even in Jacob's own loyalty mission, my favourite part ends up being something that endears me more towards Miranda than him. It's not a terrible mission I guess, but the whole thing's just so weird and hard to relate to. I think it just misses the mark story-wise, and the fact it revolves around a character I'm already quite neutral towards makes it probably my least favourite of the loyalty missions. Still, Jacob's mind is now clear from distractions and he's hopefully over that little habit of giving us bad advice for long enough for his personal matters to not affect the mission too much. We'll get back to some loyalty missions in a bit, but how about we take a bit of a break and a palate cleanser to talk about some gameplay. The gameplay of the first game was pretty good. It had its flaws and it wasn't especially deep or complex, and the Mako was unique. Overall, I liked it enough, but it could have benefited from being refined and tightened up and with a bit more care and attention put towards the abilities to make combat flow even better. Mass Effect 2. I mean, I imagine a lot of the footage has spoken for itself. This game just plays so much better than the first one, and it's not even all that different in a lot of ways. Abilities are still accessed by a hotbar that lets you use them when you want, companions are still mostly automated, although you can give them some input if needed, the abilities you have depend on your specialization, and you have the options of a few different weapon types which are greatly expanded over the first game. In fact, it's in the guns that perhaps the biggest difference lies. In the first game you had infinite ammo and an overheat mechanic on every single gun. This time around I think it's on like one gun? Most of the guns now use magazines that you eject and reload, although technically the game implies that it's not actually a clip of bullets you're ejecting, and instead the weapons are still infinite ammo and would overheat, but the thing you're supposedly reloading is a thermal clip that keeps it cool. I mean, bit of a weird way of putting it, but it's basically done as a story justification for the change to having all guns focus on reloading. I think the change was done as a way of making ducking in and out of combat a bit more effective of a strategy now, since you can poke your head out when enemies are reloading, which has a lot more visual feedback than them just not shooting to let their gun cool down a bit. And because reloading in a tight situation can add a lot of drama and excitement to a gunfight. You get an enemy down to dying in one more shot, but you have to reload and so you have to fall back. It's a bit more exciting than just standing and waiting for the gun to cool down by 10% to fire another shot. I'd say the change is somewhat meaningless to me. I don't really mind either system, though I do know some people really don't like the change. Abilities are a bit more impactful as well in my opinion. They give you a really nice variety of biotic and tech abilities as the Sentinel specialization that are mostly similar to the ones in the first game but streamlined. I also have a cool ice attack, which is neat I suppose. Leveling has also been streamlined. Instead of having a massive menu full of information, it's just a few simple boxes that dictate and showcase what you're unlocking and when. And the game just flows all around smoother. I think there's an improvement in terms of gameplay in every way, and the fact that there's no Mako segments is no doubt a blessing in the eyes of many, as it means side quests that involve going to a random planet will instead have a specially crafted area for you to go through and explore, rather than just being a big open plain with one of the game's 5 building interiors located somewhere on the surface. That may sound like a harsh indictment of the Mako for someone who previously said that it's not that bad, but I think it just helps highlight how good Mass Effect 2 handles side quests in comparison by that metric. The game just feels a lot better, and it's really hard to explain how or why without playing it, but everything about it has much better combat appeal and everything feels a lot more proactive and tactical, which helps make combat encounters feel more impactful. I know for a fact I died a lot more in this game than I did in the first one, so let that be a judge on the fairness of the challenge, or if you'd rather, serve as a criticism of my skill. It's good, it's fun to play, and I think the developers did a great job of removing the problematic parts of the first game. Good job, developers. Well, that was nice. Back to the loyalty missions.
I am a ruined vessel of sorrow and regret, but I am free.
Per the code, Samara is stoic and meditative. She is succinct in her dialogue and not the chattiest person, rarely deeming to make eye contact, but she has lived a pretty long and interesting life. Some highlights include running with a mercenary gang, a prior run-in and narrow escape from the Collectors, freeing some slaves, and falling in love with an Asari and having 3 daughters. It turned out these daughters, however, were Ardat Yakshi. She explains what exactly this means, in that it is a rare type of Asari that, when melding minds with a mate, has a genetic condition that results in the death of their mate 100% of the time. 2 of Samara's daughters chose to live in a clergy, in isolation and comfort, to devote themselves to study. The 3rd daughter, Morinth, didn't like this idea all that much and fled, opting to parade around the galaxy committing crimes with her killer puss. This was the reason that Samara swore her life to the code in the first place, giving her own freedom and all that she owed and loved to pursue her daughter and stop her murderous spree. She once found her daughter being worshipped as the head of a bizarre sex cult, leading to the deaths of many innocents from the battle between Morinth and Samara. Samara also had a run-in with Nihilus, the Spectre who was friends with Saren before the incident. Per the code, she had to pursue him and kill him, only being stopped once Nihilus found a way to use a hostage, per the code, to stop her in her tracks. She actually seems to rather admire Nihilus in a way. And, as you no doubt know, eventually she crossed paths with Shepard once pursuing a lead that would lead her as close as she had perhaps ever been to Morinth, and so the details of her loyalty mission should be pretty apparent. We head on over to Omega, where Morinth has killed another innocent victim, a human woman named Neff. There's no major law enforcement on Omega, and so, serving as private investigators, Neff's mother gives Shepard and Samara permission to investigate Neff's apartment for any clues as to Morinth's whereabouts. Neff was completely smitten with Morinth, absolutely head over heels in love with this girl. Samara tells us that Morinth is a master manipulator and knows exactly what buttons to push to get a person to fall in love with her in an almost primal manner. Pure hormones and emotion. It's interesting because I've been told that I evoke strong primal feelings in women too, just never in a positive way as Morinth seems to be able to do. We uncover that Morinth prowls the VIP section of Afterlife, so Samara sends Shepard in alone and unarmed to chat to the murderous manipulative fiend. Samara swears that she will be watching over us, but it still sounds like a really dangerous idea. Ignoring any better judgment, Shepard enters the club and starts to chat people up and find out what Morinth's interests are, so that we can try and chat her up and get her to go somewhere private. After garnering enough interest from our various dealings across the club, Morinth invites us to have some drinks. We sit down, chat about her favourite band, her favourite drugs, her favourite movie, all the dangerous places she loves to visit and all the violent acts that she likes to commit. Classic first date conversations. Her flat has some really interesting decor, to say the least, including a large Krogan statue and a sword on the wall. She makes it very clear that she's all about murder, to be honest. Like, her words are completely non-subtle. A lot of red flags all around. But maybe I can fix her. Every dialogue choice chosen is specifically crafted to try and keep the chat going and not fall into her trap. We manage to ignore her advances, and Samara interrupts her attempts to woo Shepard with an absolutely incredible battle that is visually spectacular. Kasumi came straight out of Naruto, but Samara has rocked up coming straight out of Dragon Ball. After helping her subdue her daughter, Samara approaches Morinth and uses Spirit Bomb to end her reign of chaos once and for all. Her life's purpose now fulfilled, Samara is at a loss of words. She has just killed her daughter, perhaps her favourite daughter at one point, and as an already reflective and introspective person, this has clearly hit our most stoic companion very hard. Back aboard the ship, she reflects further on Morinth. She regrets the killing of her daughter, but also states the necessity of removing a sociopathic monster from the galaxy. She also states pride at her daughter's intelligence, but, per the code, she's going to continue on in the pursuit of justice and do what she can to provide for her two non-chaotic daughters. Samara is a very weird case for me, pretty much stuck as being stoic and just and awkward per the code. But she's got a more than heartbreaking and thought-provoking enough story with her daughters and the whole Ardat Yakshi angle that she ends up being surprisingly complex. Certainly far from the complexity of some others, but she has a lot to admire, and I find her to be a generally interesting character to include, as a much more unique insight to Asari culture than what Liara was able to provide us with. And the most interesting aspect by far is a choice I got to make at one point in that mission. I grappled Morinth and allowed Samara to help take her down, but I didn't have to. I could have grappled Samara instead, and in doing so the game does something really unique. Morinth would actually join my crew masquerading as Samara. The crew won't be able to notice due to their physical similarities, but it changes her personality massively, and her conversations take on a wildly different tone. I mean, obviously it is a terrible idea to have Morinth on board. She even tries to flirt with you and kill you if you have her as a companion. But isn't it cool the game does that? That definitely takes Samara up a few pegs on the companion tier list to me, even if it's not technically about her.
A stubborn enough person can survive just about anything.
Outside of Miranda and Jacob, Zaeed was literally the first companion I and no doubt many others recruit in their game. This is because you are instantly directed to head to Omega, and he's literally waiting at the door for you with his luggage in hand. In the original version of the game, he was also a completely free DLC, meaning that unless you played the game one time on launch day and never again, you almost always had an encounter with him. He's okay. He's an old human man with tons of combat experience under his belt, probably more so than anyone in our squad barring Samara, who's like 1,000 years older than him. He's pretty charmless, abrasive and short-tempered, clearly having plenty of grudges. I'd say it's not inaccurate to compare him to Mike from Breaking Bad actually. He's a grumpy old guy who's got a crazy high kill count. His backstory is also pretty simple in comparison to some others. He's not had a crazy, tragic childhood in a Cerberus facility, no murderous daughters loose in the galaxy, and he certainly hasn't got any long-lost sons no matter what Andromeda might try to retcon in. He's just Zaeed. He's the galaxy's best bounty hunter and mercenary for hire. This is reflected pretty much in the fact that he joined the mission just because Cerberus paid him a boatload of money to do so. That's not to say there's nothing interesting to him. In fact, I'd say he's very interesting in that he is one of the co-founders of the Blue Suns mercenary group, the ones from back on Omega who imprisoned Jack and tried to stop us from getting to Okeer. They're super ruthless, and Zaeed is at least partly to blame for them showing up, alongside his former partner in crime, Vido. After a while of mercenarying around the galaxy, Vido elected to shoot Zaeed in the face and leave him for dead over a disagreement about opening their ranks to Batarian terrorists. Zaeed's loyalty can be earned by securing some revenge for him, so Shepard and Garrus tag along on a journey to where Vido is noted as being. We make our way through the brutal remains of his victims, with Vido more or less fully cognizant and aware of our approach. It doesn't take long for the shooting to start, and once it dies down a bit, Zaeed makes it clear just how much this Vito guy upsets him. Zaeed's personality is clearly akin to that of a loose cannon, preparing to do anything to kill Vito, so keeping an eye on him is paramount to make sure he doesn't do anything we'll all regret on this one. I say that because obviously once we come face to face with Vito, Zaeed does something stupid, shooting a gas pipe with the intention of setting this building ablaze and continuing to smack further gas pipes to cause as much damage as possible. It gets us into the building, but we still give Zaeed a sucker punch for his choice. You might want Vito dead, but there are innocents in this building that are going to suffer or even die for his vengeance. Zaeed is actively suggesting that we leave the people in this building to die in the fire, insisting that we don't help them, but as you've probably garnered by now, my Paragon-inclined Shepard disagrees. We focus our effort on metaphorically and literally putting out Zaeed's fires, and saving whomever we can. But as we leave the building, we watch Vito preparing to take off in a gunship. Zaeed sprays at the ship in a fury, even taking out somebody sat next to Vito, but his rival gets away unscathed. As Zaeed chastises Shepard for letting Vito get away, a freak explosion pins him under a girder. About to be burned to a crisp, Shepard speaks to him plainly, disapproving of how everything went down here, and she would be willing to leave him for dead or to fire him in normal circumstances, but as she has a way with words and a winning personality, she convinces Zaeed to put aside his vengeance and focus on the mission. Surprisingly, this does actually secure his loyalty. It feels like it shouldn't, maybe, but it does. He's now utterly loyal to the mission and unlikely to cause any more problems going forwards. He may not be Shepard's biggest ever fan, but he can at least appreciate the fact that she did elect to save his life back there, and her heart is in the right place. Maybe the old man's going soft. I'd also like to point out that if you've finished the game already prior to securing Zaeed's loyalty, which is entirely possible to do by the way, then a secret ending to this mission opens up, wherein you can actually just leave him under the girder. Ordinarily you'll help him up and either welcome him back or fire him, but in this instance you can just choose to walk away and morbidly watch as he slowly burns to death. I like that that's an option. I think it's a fun little thing that not many people will encounter, and for truly evil or sadistic players, I think it'll be a nice little treat. I appreciate that it's there, but, and I may be biased here due to his English accent, Zaeed being just so bold and brash makes him really likeable to me, even if he's not a particularly good dude, because he just sounds so compelling and believably complex. Again, not just to compare him to Mike, but I think if you did like Mike from Breaking Bad, you'll probably like Zaeed. I'd also just like to give one brief shout out to the voice actor of Zaeed. It's not something I would normally bring up unless it was for humour purposes, but Robin Sachs, his actor, is to my knowledge the only major character's voice actor in the entire trilogy to have passed away, with Mass Effect 3 being one of his last ever major acting roles before dying of a heart attack in 2013. Rest in peace, Robin, and thank you for playing Zaeed Massani. After that downer ending, I think it's about time we actually finally progress the story of the game. You may not entirely recall, as it was like an hour ago, that I last mentioned the mission to visit a derelict Reaper carcass floating in space to obtain a device called an IFF that, when attached to the Normandy, will allow Joker to fly us through the Omega-4 relay to the galactic core and find the home base of the Collectors, wherein we can defeat them and secure the safety of human colonists across the Milky Way. Hopefully that recap was sufficient enough of an explanation as to why we're here. As we approach the Reaper, Joker lets us know that there's a second ship alongside the Reaper, meaning that there will unsurprisingly be a fight on our hands. We take Miranda and Tali on board and follow Edie's directions through the ship, finding what we can about the Reaper and of the research that Cerberus had previously been conducting here. Edie informs us that after taking the IFF, we should deactivate the Reaper's Mass Effect fields, sending it plummet to the planet it's orbiting's core. I prefer my innards thoroughly uncrushed, so it seems prudent that we make a quick exit after doing this. From the logs left by the scientists, it seems as though their minds were getting a bit loopy from their time on the Reaper, perhaps some sort of offshoot of the indoctrination that had affected Benezia and Saren, and that they have seemingly all been turned into husks at some point along the way. Their bodies are littered all over on the same spikes that were present on Eden Prime, and Shepard deduces that the scientists' indoctrination had led them to worshipping the Reaper. It seems likely that from everything we know about him, the elusive man was probably aware of this but chose to do nothing. Deeper into the bowels of the Reaper, we are nearly ambushed by a husk when we are saved by a shot from a Geth. And even more concerning, it speaks to us. Something that Tali assures us is supposed to be impossible, unless it is part of a collective. A single Geth is supposed to be a drone, almost animalistic in nature, not sentient and capable of complex thought. And as weird as that is, the strangest part is how it chose to help us. After everything the Geth were involved in with Saren and when we rescued Tali, it seems odd that any Geth would not only choose to save Shepard's life, but to address her by name. Regardless, after pushing onwards through more husks and other Reaper forces, the squad bypassed the security systems and grabbed the IFF, which it seems had already been grabbed by the Cerberus team some time ago. Up ahead at the Reaper's Mass Effect core, we find the peculiar Geth unit fiddling with the controls, itself getting ambushed by the husks and deactivated. Once they're dealt with, the core is rapidly destabilizing, but Miranda suggests on our way out that we should take the Geth for study for Cerberus. Tali hates this idea, but does at least agree that having an intact Geth to take a look at is a fascinating scientific endeavour, even if she doesn't want anything to do with it. Regardless, we literally throw its lifeless form through the vacuum and into the airlock of the Normandy. Miranda suggests that we sell the Geth to Cerberus for a bulk of cash, or perhaps even using it in the fight against the Collectors, since it seemingly wants to protect Shepard. Jacob would rather dispose of it, but Shepard is actually the one who raises the most interesting point. This Geth had a piece of N7 armour, similar to the armour Shepard used to wear with the Alliance, attached to its chest. AI don't take trophies, and Geth don't communicate with people. They're supposed to be simplistic intelligences that resemble complex thought, but are actually far from the real thing. Ultimately, I think it's clear the best decision is to take a chat with the Geth, and find out what it knows. To study and to understand its motivations so that we can find out how best to utilise it and its clear combat and likely technological prowess in the battlefield. Or to at least garner an understanding as to why it seemed to want to help Shepard in the first place, not only to stay alive, but to destroy the Reaper same as us. After putting up a barrier both physical and internal to EDI's systems, the Geth is reawakened. It springs to life, or dare I say, bolts up, and comes face to face with Shepard, sharing its intent not to attack and claiming that it, or they, not only know who Shepard is, but of her deeds, actions and histories. They refer to the Reaper as an old machine, and seemingly have a very external view on things. By their nature as synthetic life, the Geth are unable to typically think in the same way as most organic life, this one in particular being very clinical, unemotional and sincere in everything it says. They state everything factually, that they too wish to see the old machines defeated, as the Reapers do not consider the Geth to be worthy, viewing them as lesser machines that are unnecessary distractions. They explain that they and many Geth do what they can to fight the old machines. Hence the creation of this vessel containing thousands of individual Geth programs running in tandem with one another that form a singular complex mind and function elevated above and at a higher capacity than the typical Geth unit. One that, when pressed for a name and struggling to explain their perceived futility of names, accepts EDI's suggestion to refer to itself as Legion, for they are many. One other interesting thing that they mention in addition to opposing the old machines and their desire to work with, as they call her, Shepard Commander, is the mention of heretics. The Geth we have encountered up until now fall under this umbrella, an offshoot of the Geth hive mind seeking guidance from the Reapers. Everything Legion says is honestly shocking, and it seems our understanding of the Geth was very narrow-minded up until this point. I can only wonder how Tali must be feeling about all of this.
I never wanted this, Shepard. Keela, I never wanted this.
Considering her lack of enthusiasm about taking the Geth unit on board to begin with, it should come as little to no surprise that Tali, whose race was kicked off of their homeworld by the Geth many years ago, and forced to live on a fleet of spaceships wandering aimlessly through the galaxy, isn't particularly fond of Legion on even a conceptual level, but she has bigger fish to fry right now. After helping Shepard take down Saren, Tali has moved on to bigger and better things, serving faithfully on a different spaceship to the flotilla, the Nema, even having had her name changed from Tali'Zorah Naraya to Tali'Zorah Vasanima to showcase a rite of passage among her people. One thing I tactically neglected to mention in the first video due to its lack of relevance is that Tali's father is a member of the Migrant Fleet's Admiralty Board, one of the head honchos who helps call shots about the future of the Quarian people. This is a big part of why her loyalty to her people meant so much to her, causing her to leave after Saren's defeat and to decline the request to join Shepard back on Freedom's Progress. It is also why now, after having been back aboard the Normandy for some time, she informs Shepard of a message that she received from the flotilla. And it's a doozy. Tali is being charged with treason by the Admiralty Board, and is under threat of exile from the Migrant Fleet in perpetuity. For someone who has been so consistently loyal to her people, this is heartbreaking news for her, so we rush over there with her to get her to speak to the Admirals and get this all ironed out. We also bring along Legion, for humour reasons. which inevitably results in some immediate drama, with the Quarians demanding we send them off the ship as it crosses a line. We protest this, saying that Legion is part of our crew and that they can be trusted, and ultimately the Quarians relent, which then leads to a little bit of irony when they reveal that Tali is being charged with bringing active Geth aboard the fleet. Whoops. We are directed towards Tali's hearing, and so we move on ahead and are introduced to one of the admirals and a friend of Tali's father, who refers to her as Tali'Zorah Vast Normandy due to her departure from the Nema to join Shepard's crew. Due to her closeness to Tali, this admiral is deemed ineligible to have a vote in the trial, but she gives what advice and guidance she can. It is also revealed that a ship's captain has to serve as the lawyer to their crew in the event of a trial, meaning that Shepard is therefore the defense attorney in this case. Legion's presence is immediately pointed out as a disruption to the trial. Clearly bringing them aboard was a terrible but hilarious idea. Fortunately the situation is diffused thanks to our previous silver tonguing of the captain. Ugh. The admirals bicker among themselves regarding Shepard serving as attorney in this case, but it is ultimately accepted to have her declare Tali's plea of not guilty. They then reveal that Tali's father was working on a research ship in the fleet which Tali had frequently sent Geth parts and research materials to, in the interest of having her father and his team study them. At some point, however, fully intact Geth were able to get on board the ship and kill everyone, including Tali's father. Tali claims that she had nothing to do with this and that she had never once sent a full Geth to the ship. Shepard is quick to assert that while this trial is obviously necessary per their customs, that she and Tali can clear out the Geth on this vessel and try to find exonerating evidence. Reassuringly, they say that Tali dying on this mission would also have her declared as innocent, which is cheery. Before heading to her father's ship to see if we can find any evidence, or hopefully Tali's old man alive and well, we take some time to speak to all of the admirals and figure out their thoughts. The one we already spoke to reveals that the choice not to tell Tali the nature of her charges, regarding her father's likely demise, was a tactical choice to make Tali's shock convincing for the sake of helping her case. Not a cool move, but I guess it is a smart one, and she is at least clearly looking out for Tali's best interests. It is also made apparent that the Quarians' recent reclusiveness after their run-in with Cerberus while Shepard was dead is because they are gearing up for a full-scale assault on their original homeworld and a war with the Geth. Whilst the Admiralty is currently divided on the matter, talking to them showcases that it's just a matter of time before they decide to pull the trigger and declare open war on the Geth. After meeting Legion, this has turned what would seem like a noble cause a lot more morally grey, which one of the admirals even surprisingly seems to agree with, claiming that he would be open to pursuing the idea of coexistence and peace with the Geth if at all possible, which Legion even seems to suggest is a possibility, albeit an unlikely one, but this all seems like a future problem, as the general consensus among the admirals is that Tali regaining the ship and arguing her case is likely to be enough to clear her name of any wrongdoing, which while not helping the Quarians regain their homeworld, will at least bring Tali a lot of peace. We also meet Vitor, the chap from Freedom's Progress, and find out that he and Kal Riegar, whose life we also saved, have done what they can to argue the toss for Tali's case. It's great to hear that Tali's friends are on her side and loyal, as well as being told that the theory regarding Tali's research seems to be correct. That is both good and also alarming, as it shows her to be a capable and loyal Quarian, but that research about dark energy is really weird and could complicate life in the galaxy going forwards. Well, lest we tarry more, I elect to head us over to the research ship and take out what seems to be a large number of Geth that are possibly expanding their numbers over time. And a large number they are, as there are dozens of Geth of many varieties aboard what is quite a small ship, all things said. But, especially with Legion's help, they serve little threat at this point in time. We find some of the doodads that Tali sent her dad with her informing us that he had asked for Geth technologies for some time now. Tali had believed he was just studying new weapons technology to use against the Geth. Among all the evidence on the ship, however, she discovers that the crew of the ship were performing experiments to attempt to reprogram the Geth and use them for their own gain, and that they had been attempting to activate the Geth deliberately for the purposes of using Geth to fight the Geth and reclaim the homeworld. It's clear that the homeworld means a lot to the Quarians, that their weakened state of living in space and their isolation from each other living their lives wrapped in these suits has affected them even if they don't want to admit it. And in this moment Tali snaps and gets genuinely upset thinking about all the things that Shepard and Garrus and everyone else she knows and cares about can take so many things for granted. A nice smell, touching a flower, holding a loved one close, all things that the Quarians can't ever truly experience, and all things that the pilgrimage is designed to showcase to Quarians so that they will long for these experiences and desire to live their lives on a planet once more. That same desire is likely what led to Tali's father pursuing such dangerous research, to try and speedrun the reclamation of the homeworld with new and powerful weapon technologies. Unfortunately, he never gets to explain it to us, as we find his body just up ahead. Poor Tali. We console her and listen to the recording her father left for her, to acquire the data aboard the ship and show it to the Admiralty board. It's evident that Tali's father made a colossal mistake before his life ended, but it's still such a shame to see Tali so heartbroken over this. She's usually so cheery and pleasant to be around, and it's clear that these events have been hard on her. Doing what we can to alleviate her hardship, we find the recording her father directed us to, that explicitly states his intent was to leave Tali out of this, to explicitly make sure that his research and his plans to accelerate taking back the homeworld through dangerous, risky study of the Geth was always prioritizing her safety and keeping her innocent in all this, taking the brunt of the blame himself, and openly declaring in the recording that he masterminded the operation, and his daughter having nothing to do with it. It may not be enough to console her, but it does prove her innocence, even if it regrettably would prove her father's guilt. Shepard argues that the evidence is the only way to save her from exile, but Tali is having none of it, wanting to preserve her father's legacy, even if it puts her future in jeopardy. At the trial, we barge in to drop the bombshell and prove Tali's innocence. We have the option to use the evidence to clear her name, but we take heed of what Tali said, and choose not to use the evidence whatsoever. Shepard's quick wit, charm, and paragon tendencies come to full fruition as she argues the heck out of Tali's case, Phoenix writing her statement so passionately that the admirals are stunned. With little contemplation, they decide to elect Tali as innocent of all crimes, without ever learning the truth of her father. Shepard uses her platform to make one last plea to the Quarians to prepare themselves for the Reapers, and to forget about their squabbles with the Geth for the time being. Yeah, like that'll ever happen. With her mind at peace and her future about the fleet secured, Tali and all of her friends appreciate Shepard, but it's clear that the minds of the fleet in general will not be swayed, and that the Quarians and Geth are likely to go to war sooner rather than later. Not all rights can be wronged in one day, but Tali's loyalty has been truly gained, and she returns to the Normandy adopting and embracing the new name that the admirals lugged onto her, returning as Tali'Zorah Vas Normandy.
There is no individual. We are Geth.
Miranda Lawson, Jacob Taylor, Zaeed Massani, Mordin Solus, Garrus Vakarian, Jack, Erdnot Grunt, Kasumi Goto, Thane Krios, Samara, Tali'Zorah Vas Normandy, Legion. 12 companions, and 11 of them have had their loyalties to Shepard firmly secured. That leaves us with one more character to talk about, and as you may have garnered from how I first described them, they are complicated. Subverting many of the expectations and pre-established beliefs that the games had set up regarding the Geth by introducing Legion is perhaps one of the most brilliant bits of writing in these games. The introduction of a Geth unit that is not only willing to ally with Shepard, but showcases humanistic tendencies in speech and thought and represents an entire side of the Geth that was hitherto unknown, is extremely fascinating and adds so much nuance to the story that I can't help but love Legion right down to the conceptual level. Legion was created as a fairly unique Geth, designed with the purpose of exploring the galaxy far outside of Geth-controlled space, and equipped with a large number of Geth programs that allow for it to think and speak independently of the Geth hive mind. It's also given a lot more flappy parts to its body to allow it to have facial expressions, such as moving its upper head ridges to simulate raised eyebrows, which is just kinda goofy looking. They were created following the destruction of Sovereign, and sent on a journey to investigate and follow in the footsteps of Commander Shepard. Eden Prime, Therum, where we found Liara, Feros, Noveria, Vermeer, Ilos, and all the uncharted worlds and moons along the way, until landing down at the Normandy crash site. The same one we visited earlier, and making the decision to salvage some of Shepard's old armour to repair some damage. Curiously, this damage was sustained all the way back on Eden Prime, but they never bothered to repair it until finding the N7 armour, and when asked why they chose to do this, they seem to imply that the decision was irrational and non-calculated, perhaps even an emotional one, which suggests some heavy implications regarding the existence and the future of the Geth. As I said before, Legion is really straight to the point. The Mass Effect wiki chooses to use the word laconic to describe their speech pattern, which is to suggest disinterest in the topic at hand. And while I don't necessarily appreciate their attempts to score brownie points with their college professors on this thesis, it is apt terminology. Legion adapts the mindset of why use lot word, and responds in matter-of-fact short sentences or even using single words to make their point. Despite their lackadaisical attitude, see Mass Effect wiki, I can use fancy words too. To most topics, they do seem enthused by philosophy and discussions on the war between the Geth and their creators, the Quarians, with mixed feelings. They also display an audio log of the first time a Quarian was ever frightened by the Geth, something I referred to in the first video as a major catalyst of the war between their peoples. And just as the Quarians seem to be gearing up for war with the Geth, it would seem that the Geth themselves are also gearing up to something of an internal conflict, as Legion elaborates on their mention of heretics by explaining that the Geth that Shepard and most people have encountered up until this point, the ones employed by Saren, those that attacked the Citadel and those that were aboard the flotilla moments ago, they were heretical Geth, those that chose to follow the Reapers in an attempt to be assimilated into their ranks. Most Geth are in fact greatly disinterested in organic affairs as a whole. Legion and the Geth that they represent don't particularly care for what humans, Asari or even Quarians are up to as long as they leave the Geth out of it. The only reason Legion is here intermingling with organic lifeforms is because of their desire to eliminate the heretics and oppose the Reapers and, therefore by extension, the Collectors. So, when Legion approaches Shepard with word of the heretic Geth creating a virus designed to convert all Geth into heretics, requesting help with infiltrating a heretic space station and destroying the virus, it seems wise to enter the good graces of the peaceful Geth and try and work together with Legion to strive for lasting peace between their people and the other life in the galaxy. Joker's not too pleased about flying us headfirst into a Geth megastructure, but he drops us off and Shepard, Legion and Tali undergo what is hopefully to be a nice and easy stealth mission for the most part. At this point Legion informs us of the low air and gravity on the station, and that they have uncovered another option in addition to their original plan to destroy the station immediately, with the option to rewrite the virus and flip it, to instead rewrite the heretics and convert them to the more ambivalent Geth's side. That's morally grey, but Legion informs that we'll have some time to ponder on it while sneaking through the base. This mission actually has some unique gameplay by encouraging you not to step on certain parts of the floor at risk of alerting the Geth in stasis, which is pretty cool. After several rooms of this and exploring the general living conditions of the Geth, bleak and cold by the way, Legion uncovers copies of their own databases in the heretics' records. They express shock at the subterfuge undergone by the heretics, as the Geth are generally amiable and trusting of one another due to their interconnected nature. Legion seems genuinely hurt by the idea that the heretics genuinely hold hatred to them, just another showcasing of the growing individuality and personification that Legion and perhaps the Geth as a whole are undergoing. Legion is still conflicted about the whole destroy or rewrite options regarding the fate of this facility, and when faced with the console decides to leave the choice to Shepard due to trusting her, and I don't blame them. Even I was conflicted on what to do, but I eventually elect to choose rewriting of the heretics. I feel icky about this one, so let me justify that my thought process generally consists of the fact that, for now, the Geth are on the verge of sentience, but they're not quite there yet. They're still ultimately in a situation of being divided and weak currently, and they deserve to be at full capacity to help make future decisions and have a more fruitful and fulfilling future for their peoples. Additionally, we're going to want all the help we can get when it comes to fighting the Reapers. By the time the Geth invariably gain sentience down the line, they're unlikely to have much conflict over this decision and view it as an act of mercy. Maybe. It's still grey, but I think that works. Regardless, activating the new virus is going to send an energy surge across the station that will purge organic life, so Shepard and Tali rush off the station with Legion and back to the Normandy. On board, Tali and Legion are in conflict over Legion's decision to send the Geth information gathered on the flotilla to the Geth. Tali fears repercussions from the Geth over the cruelty of her father's experiments, which Shepard even compares as being tantamount to the cruelty that Malin was conducting on his experiments back on Tuchanka, or that Cerberus had done to Jack. If you knew that someone was performing cruel weapons tests on humans, would you be able to sit back and do nothing, or would you want to tell the proper authorities about it? The way I see it, while the Geth are in a nebulous spot on the cusp of achieving full intelligence and life, Mordin said that his cut-off point for experiments was the ability to perform calculus, and the Geth can perform calculus. They are people and therefore deserve to know what happened, but at the same time sending this information to the Geth could spark conflict and weaken both the Geth and Quarian militaries for when the Reapers come, leaving them defenceless. As such, Shepard directs the two to a compromise, where Tali gives some non-confidential information for Legion to transmit to the Geth in the name of pursuing peace between their people. The Geth have ultimately gotten a whole lot more complicated by the introduction of Legion as a character, and will no doubt continue to get more and more complicated as things progress throughout the rest of this game and the next. And I look forward to seeing what it all culminates in, but for now we're done with gaining Legion's utmost loyalty and, indeed, the loyalty of all of our companions. With that in mind, we're now ready to head through the relay and take the battle to the Collectors once and for all. Just in time too, as... The Reaper IFF is fully installed, so Shepard and the squad head down to their current mission via the shuttle and leave Joker, EDI and the crew to investigate the anomalous recordings that the device is giving. After investigating it further, EDI determines that the ship is transmitting its signal. The Collectors arrive and begin their invasion of the Normandy. EDI suggests that Joker hook her up to take over the ship as she believes that she can regain control of the systems and get the ship away from the Collectors. It is now that the game, for the first and only time in the entire trilogy, gives you full control of a non-Shepard character, and has you scurry along the lengths of the familiar sights and sounds of the Normandy to reach the AI core. The crew is being picked off one by one by the Collector forces, and the fragile Joker is unable to do anything but sneak his way through the vents and watch people getting abducted. Kelly, Gabby, Kenneth, that chef guy, even Dr. Chakwa. The Collectors, well, they collect them all. Joker hooks EDI up to the ship and grants her full control, before making his way down to the engineering deck and overriding the controls. EDI will open the airlocks at this point, draining the ship of its air, warning Joker that he's the only non-Collector alive aboard the ship at this point. She jets us off far away from the Collectors, seals the airlocks back up, and does what she can to console Joker in his time of strife. The two of them send a message to Shepard and her squad, and Joker hobbles off back to the pilot's seat. Shepard, Joker, Miranda and Jacob all discuss what to do next. EDI reassures that the systems are purged, and that everything is ready for heading through the relay. Miranda's not happy about EDI having so much control now, but Joker actually comes to EDI's defense and backs her up. This is what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the two of them bonding and getting close. This whole incident really shows a major shift in attitude for Joker. Fortunately, with everyone fully loyal and committed to the mission, and having went out of my way to provide upgrades to the ship's armor, weapons and shield systems along the way, the Normandy is as ready as it will ever be to take the fight back to the Collectors. And after this personal slight, taking our crew and putting a ticking clock over the whole mission, well, they just encourage us to not hold back.
The Collectors took my people. Time to go get them back.
On the way to the relay, Shepard is playing Overwatch on her tablet when Thane walks into her cabin. He expresses his feelings as plainly and succinctly as he can, showcasing his appreciation for the actions that Shepard has given him, but his frustration at how on the eve of battle, in a moment where normally he is awash with calm and zen, and a readiness and willingness to fight and to die if his gods see it necessary, he is afraid once more to lose his son, to lose the woman he has grown to love once again, or to leave them alone in the galaxy after everything he's done to atone for his past mistakes. With tears streaming down his face, Shepard showcases her feelings for Thane, embracing him as it fortunately fades to black. The elusive man fills us in on his thoughts one last time before we head to the relay, sort of giving us the closest thing to a pep talk that this typically ambivalent man can give, and Joker takes us through to the unknown. Almost immediately upon arrival at the galactic core, the Normandy narrowly avoids being bombarded with debris from spaceships of civilizations long gone. In the distance, the Collector's gigantic base looms in the silence of space. On approach, the Normandy comes under attack from drones that try to pierce the ship's hull. Had I not upgraded the armor plating here, then Jack would have immediately been killed at this point. The drones manage to infiltrate the cargo hold, and so Shepard, Thane and Tali go down to take out the intruder. The battle is short, and with that dealt with, we go out of the frying pan and into the fire, as Joker flies us through the debris field. Because of the upgraded shields, it means that the Normandy ramming through a large chunk of spaceship here mercifully does not result in the deaths of one of a number of crewmates, including the potential death of one of the following crew: Kasumi, Legion, Tali, Thane, Garrus, Zaeed or Grunt. EDI takes control of the ship, and Shepard and the crew in the cargo hold deal with the same drone making its way back in. It's no tougher than last time really, and with it out of the way, there is nothing between us and the Collector base up ahead. It seems that the Normandy's presence is known, and that pesky Collector ship that destroyed the old Normandy, attacked Horizon in an attempt to kill Kaidan, and tried to destroy us again when the elusive man suggests we waltz into its trap, once again raised its ugly head in an attempt to shoot us down. Fortunately, we upgraded the ship's cannon just as Garrus suggested, and are quickly able to deal a crippling blow to the ship that allows Joker enough time and space to outmaneuver their cannon. Once again, this is an instance of the upgrade saving the lives of one of several of our crewmates, with the potential of having lost Thane, Garrus, Zaeed, Grunt, Jack or Samara, assuming they had survived the previous instances of non-upgraded assaults of course. I highlight this now just to show how brutal the game is willing to be with your squadmates at this point. If you didn't heed the advice given to you or callously followed Jacob's incoherent ramblings, then you could be wandering into the suicide mission with 3 less people than you anticipated. And we're only just getting started. The Normandy has sustained serious damage from the fights with the drones and the collector ship, with many internal systems on the verge of non-functioning. Joker and Edie are able to guide us into a relatively safe and quiet landing zone, but it seems as though extensive repairs to the ship are going to be necessary in order to guarantee a safe exodus. As such, the ship will stay put while everyone goes in under the assumption that this may be a one-way trip into the belly of the beast. Everyone is here to stop the collectors, and the 12 of us work together to formulate a plan. Step 1 of the plan is to infiltrate the base. There are 2 different pathways leading to the area where the rest of our crew, the ones that were kidnapped, are likely being held. To split the attention of the collectors, they decide to split up and look for clues. One fire team will be led by Shepard, and the other by a trusted ally and leader who can safely command a squad. Along the way, however, there are a series of locked doors across both routes, which can only be accessed by a maintenance shaft. Jacob volunteers to clamber through the shaft, but Miranda suggests a tech expert would be more appropriate for this mission. As always, ignoring Jacob is, hilariously, the much sounder advice, leaving the choice to be down to the mechanical genius that is Tali, the literal machine that is Legion, or the master hacker Kasumi. Due to not requiring air and thus not knowing what's going on in that ventilation shaft, I opt for sending Legion into the vent. You can also choose to send, if you so desire, Mordin, Thane, Garrus or Jacob. This is basically a test of knowledge from the game to see how well you actually know your crew at this point. All of these people are indeed intelligent and capable when it comes to technology, but they aren't fully invested in a technology-based skill set like Tali, Legion and Kasumi are. Mordin and Garrus are split between tech and weapons, Jacob is also heavily involved in biotics, and Thane dabbles sort of in all 3 categories. As I am familiar with the characters and paid attention to their abilities and skill sets, I am able to make the judgment on who to send, and I will be choosing the choices that lead to my friends not dying personally, but at any point making a wrong decision will result in deaths. If I send Mordin into the vent, Mordin will die. I also need to consider the case of the 2 different access routes being traversed. Shepard will lead one of the squads, with Miranda offering to lead the other. Jack naturally objects to this, so we are once again given the choice of selecting a leader for the other squad. With the exception of Legion, who we just shoved into a vent, we can select anyone else for this job, although again picking the wrong choice will result in the death of the person in the vent. As funny as it might be to see Grunt, who has been alive for maybe a few months at best at this point, bossing people around, it seems wise to select someone of a more tactically sound mindset. The natural leaders on the ship would boil down to Miranda, Jacob and Garrus. Miranda has headed dozens of missions serving Cerberus, and Jacob has likewise done so for Cerberus and the Alliance before that. Garrus is also the recipient of strict classic military training and the well-established leader of a vigilante organisation. As I tend to steer away from Jacob's sound judgment on too many matters, and for the sake of listening to what Jack said, I opt to choose my bro Garrus as the leader for the other team, and Miranda seems to approve at least. Oh yeah, and did I mention that had I not made any of the characters I selected here or in future parts of the mission loyal, they too would have perished? Yeah, you don't want to mess around with this part of the game. Make sure you listen to Miranda's advice. I decide to go in with a pretty bizarre combination of Samara and Jacob, since I don't especially intend to use them for any other parts of the mission, and I like to try and use everyone in this part at least once, and we make our way forwards parallel to Garrus's team, taking down groups of collectors and following Legion's instruction. Due to making wise choices in my selections for allies for this part of the mission, and the combat prowess of our team, everyone makes it through the door in time to protect Legion as they close the door behind us and lock us off from the pursuing collector forces. Now trapped in the belly of the beast, the squad peep their peepers on the true scale of the collector's operation here, just in time to watch that woman Kaidan was friendly with on Horizon horrifyingly dissolve into goop. The squad quickly cracks open all of the pods that they can, freeing all of the Normandy's crew from captivity. Had we not come here immediately after their kidnapping, they, and this might not surprise you anymore, would have died. Kelly, Chakwa, the cook. Fortunately, we made it just in time to save them and all of the nameless nobodies on the crew due to not tarrying. With the crew now free, they explained to us that the collectors melted the Horizon colonists into some sort of grey goo and piped them through further into the facility. This seems to be their grand plan and the point to their kidnapping of all of these colonies. Step 2 of infiltrating the base is going to require waltzing through a large chamber covered in those dangerous seeker swarms looking to devour us. Samara theorizes that a powerful biotic could create a barrier that would keep the people within it safe from external threat. Miranda, for perhaps the first time ever, gives some poor advice in suggesting that any old biotic could handle it. In this instance though, it seems wise to go with one of the more powerful biotics and not risk taking any chances here. So we choose to take Jack, since her and Samara are the only people that really are truly powerful enough biotics to not run into any issues here. A diversion team will also be needed, and once again an effective leader is necessary. While we could use Garrus again or go for Jacob if we really wanted, I did say I wanted to mix things up and try and use as varied a team as possible, and since I haven't had Miranda do anything yet, I put her in charge of the fire team. Before we can go however, there is the issue of the crew. They're not exactly capable fighters, Reapers, and while Joker would be able to do a pickup for them, they're unlikely to make it to safety on their own. As such, I assigned Mordin to look after them, as thankfully anyone will do at this point, and he is so incredibly fragile that it seems wise to get him back on the ship where he can be more effectively used to look into helping the crew with any potential injuries. Going under the dome with Shepard and Jack will be Zaeed and Grunt, the biggest and meatiest forces we have at our disposal, and we slowly make our way through the swarm and past a few groups of collectors. It's an interesting little gameplay gimmick, but it's pretty slow paced, so I won't be talking about it too much. Due to choosing my squad mates wisely, we once again make it through this section without any deaths, getting Miranda's team inside with us, returning Mordin and the crew safely, and eventually making it to the next major crossroads in our descent. Shepard and 11 of her 12 apostles are gathered at the base of a floating platform that leads to the Collector's control systems. As always, we will be heading up with 2 of our pals to face whatever is up there, meaning that the rest of them will remain here and hold off the Collectors that are cutting their way through the doors. We have some big guns on our team, so the logical option is to have the biggest guns hunker down and unload heck onto the Collectors. We're talking Zaeed, we're talking Grunt, Legion, Garrus, Samara, even Miranda. The people with professional or even military training, years of combat experience and fierce abilities to take down their threats. Who we are not talking about is someone like Kasumi, who prefers to remain out of the limelight and take things down stealthily. I also for some reason choose Jack here, even though I could have sworn I chose Tali. Not really sure why, other than I probably just wanted her biotic abilities over Tali's engineering, but I'll at least note that Tali is definitely more fragile than Jack and even Kasumi are, being second in fragility only to Mordin. Regardless, this is the bed I made, so we head up to the platform to lie in it. Across a series of floating platforms, Shepard and the girls take out wave after wave of oncoming Collectors who, even with Harbinger's direct intervention, are unable to even attempt to stop us. At the end of it all, Edie takes control of a platform and sends us off to find the controls and the source of the structure that all of this human goop has been making. What we find is the under construction form of a brand new Reaper being created in the image of a human. The Collectors, under the order or control of the Reapers, have been harvesting the colonists to turn them into new Reapers that resemble powerful races. This means there is presumably a Prothean Reaper out there somewhere, for example. While the Reapers' admiration of humanity is certainly flattering, it's also quite disturbing and certainly worth stopping now, in hopes of stopping the Reapers' plans to continue abducting colonists. Before we can properly formulate a plan, more Collectors drop in, and after fighting them, we do what damage we can to the human Reaper by destroying its suspension and sending it plummeting to its destruction. Shepard contacts Thane, instructing everyone aboard to begin extraction to the Normandy. The Elusive Man then contacts us at this point, having seen the technology that the Collectors were working on, and formally demands that Shepard use a radiation pulse to destroy the Collectors on the base, but to keep the Reaper shell intact for study and use. After everything that we saw from Sovereign, from that Reaper floating through space that corrupted the minds of the scientists on board, and all of the suffering caused by Harbinger in the name of creating his Reaper, no, it's not worth taking this repugnant technology back with us. The Reapers can be destroyed, as we have seen, but Cerberus with a Reaper sounds like a really bad time. We plant the explosives and... oh, come on dude, not cool, I thought you were dead. I think it's pretty safe to say that Sovereign would not have been defeated by Shepard, Jack and Kasumi blasting it with tiny little pistols. Fortunately for us then, that this Reaper isn't even close to being finished and has some incredibly obvious weak points. Not to say that this is an easy feat by any measure, it's a pretty tough and arduous fight, but as we all know, shooting glowy bits long enough will eventually lead to positive results. Kasumi almost rides the slip and slide to certain doom, but thankfully the loyalty of the crew prevails, and everyone is confidently not falling into the abyss, and not crush to death under rubble after the tremors of the fallen Reaper shake the facility to its core. The bomb is dangerously close to setting off, and everyone else is already aboard the Normandy, so, with Harbinger sending everything it's got to chase us down, we leg it as fast as we can to hop back aboard our ship, watching as Joker of all people fires an assault rifle to cover our tracks both heroically and in a very goofy manner. And, just in the nick of time, the Normandy escapes the detonation of the Collector base, and we watch as the Reaper's plans have been thwarted once again, seeing the last echo of the Protheans die with it. Humanity is saved, and we made sure that the Elusive Man didn't get what he wanted, meaning he is thoroughly disappointed in us. As was kind of obvious from the get-go, he reveals his true form at this point, that of a monster looking out for his own self-interest, power and greed, who is looking to dominate and control the galaxy. Shepard cuts ties with him, with Cerberus, and her and her crew set off to get to work repairing their ship, forging new and everlasting friendships and bonds between unlikely allies, and forging a new future for the galaxy to prepare against the Reaper threat. Harbinger made it clear that he is coming, and we will be the first and last line of defense for when the Reapers arrive. Defeating Sovereign was an excellent showcase of why I love Mass Effect, but the defeat of the Collectors, well, that was Mass Effect 2. You know we're not done though, right? The Collectors are defeated, but there are still a few loose ends in the galaxy, with Mass Effect 2 having received several DLC following its launch. We already covered Zaeed, Kasumi and the Normandy crash site, as well as mentioning the prominent DLC missions, the free Firewalker mission pack and the paid DLCs titled Overlord, Arrival and Lair of the Shadow Broker. We'll tackle the free one first because, well, that's the order that I recorded the footage in, but also because it's the least interesting and simplest of the packs, and I think we can all use a breather after the intensity of the Collector base. This DLC follows a series of 5 relatively short missions subtitled as Project Firewalker, with pretty much each and every one of the missions being focused on the grand return of everyone's favourite part of the first game, driving. Originally I was going to write out this section giving somewhat of a look at each mission, but there's really not too much to go on in that regard. It's just typically driving around, shooting some guys or scanning some stuff, and occasionally using the vehicle's jumping ability to do a bit of parkour. Instead, I'll mostly comment on the vehicle itself, which actually controls really well. In the first game, the Mako was designed to feel clunky and slow, to resemble a proper ATV style of vehicle that is heavily armoured and safe, but cumbersome to drive due to its size. I'd say it did a pretty good job, although you could argue it was skewed to being too cumbersome and clunky based on the overall negative reception to its implementation. As such, driving was entirely cut from the base game of Mass Effect 2, and the Mako doesn't appear once. In this DLC, the game instead provides us a vehicle called the Hammerhead, which is a much slicker, hovering vehicle that goes at very, very fast speeds. The Firewalker missions pretty much entirely take place inside of this vehicle, which, while troubling in some ways, do allow them to stand out from the base game while also fitting in quite naturally. The plot of these short assignments consists of following up on various pieces of information provided by a Cerberus program titled Project Firewalker. Locate a missing ship where you initially acquire the new vehicle, go to a different planet and deal with some rogue Geth technology, survey and study a site littered with Prothean artifacts, drive through an active volcano, and discover the locations of some high-ranking Cerberus researchers that a large part of this has been an attempt to track down. The final one uncovering the result of the missing scientist's research leading to a long-lost Prothean relic. And that's where it ends. The relic itself serves no real purpose. Shepard just ends up using it as a paperweight on her desk, and there is no, to my understanding, consequences regardless of if you do this DLC or not. It's just a short little romp, effectively letting you do a few bonus side quests that feature a relatively unique mechanic for Mass Effect 2. They're nice, the story is some extra fluff to add purpose to it, but I can't say it's anything too special, just an okay time all around.
Square root of 918.09 is 30.3.
The first of the proper paid DLC that we shall tackle shall be, once again, perhaps the least consequential in terms of its plot and its content. Compared to Firewalker, I mean sure, there's a whole heck of a lot more stuff to this one in general, with a much more interesting plot and more variety in its gameplay. Project Overlord refers to a dodgy science mission being headed by, surprise surprise, Cerberus, who are looking to use VI technology to devise a virus capable of hijacking and controlling the Geth. As is typical of dodgy scientific experiments, especially those funded and operated by Cerberus, things went awry. The VI, nicknamed Overlord, is attempting to scarper from the confinement of the research facility and upload its virus to the extranet, which is to say the advanced form of the internet that is used across the galaxy. That is to say, it's trying to Y2K itself and take over the electronic devices of the entire galaxy. The VI is very powerful, and while the one remaining scientist we are able to find here seems to take pride in it, it's clear that there's a few problems here. Firstly, the obvious problem of the program getting loose and trying to escape is bad. Secondly, they have been using live Geth on the facility, meaning there are a bunch of heretics and or partially reprogrammed Geth wandering around the planet that are likely to be following Overlord's orders. The first order of operations is to attempt to retract the satellite dish that would connect the facility to the extranet, as that would disable the VI's ability to leave the planet. After our first run-in with the hijacked Geth, we make it to the satellite dish and destroy the uploady part of it to stop the VI's ability to leave the planet. After an overly dramatic escape sequence, the three of us land in relative safety in the presence of the project lead, a man named Gavin Archer. He explains the situation better to Shepard, expressing that the whole thing has been a bit of a failure as of late and that his brother David was the volunteer test subject used to power the VI. Essentially, David Archer is the Overlord program, with him becoming more and more powerful and aggressively attempting to overcome his bindings and escape the planet. It is up to Shepard and crew to break into this facility and try to stop him. To get in there, however, all three project leads have to input their approval onto the system, but with Gavin being the only survivor, it means it's up to Shepard to handle the activation of the other two switches. Gavin also takes the moment to inquire as the safety of using Legion for the mission, but the numerous programs that make Legion who they are should be more than enough to stop it from being an issue. We also took Jack because it seemed fitting to take someone who loves destroying Cerberus stuff along for this romp. He explains that we're to head to Vulcan Station and Prometheus Station with due haste, and so Shepard and the gang set off right away, once again using the Hammerhead. Which, yes, means that outside of the Firewalker assignments, the Overlord DLC is the only other instance of the Hammerhead being used in Mass Effect 2. It controls identically, but this time we have a much larger and more open area to explore that feels kind of similar to how the brief driving segment on Noveria felt in the first game in some ways. In terms of the original Mass Effect trilogy, this may be my favourite driving segment, because it just has so much to explore and it feels so good. Had there been any driving in Mass Effect 3, that might be a bit more up for debate however. There is driving in Andromeda too, but I don't currently remember enough of how it felt, so I won't comment on it beyond that. For now, let's focus on the driving we do here and now to reach the stations and get to where David is hooked up to the machine. The game provides an arrow to point in the direction of key objectives, which is tremendously helpful, and the onboard navigation system also points out a few key features when approaching certain areas, such as pleasant views, wildlife, and a few collectibles we can find scattered around this open plain. We first decide to head on over to Vulcan Station, a geothermal power plant located within a cave system. The defensive mechs along the way are all hijacked by David, so in addition to doing some more parkour in the Hammerhead, across molten lava no less, we ride the wild wind and do a bit of computer hacking in order to get more steam vents open to navigate us to the base proper. After fighting even more mechs, we reach the control room where we activate the override and make our exodus from Vulcan. Across the open landscape we arrive at Prometheus Station and get attacked by the Geth cannon that David is now in control of. This is basically a little boss fight slash puzzle section in the Hammerhead that is a nice bit of variety, although it's not terribly difficult. With that pretty cool set piece out of the way, Shepard enters the station, which is a large Geth ship crashed onto the surface of the planet, with Tali and Legion to try and activate the signal thingy required to open the door to Overlord. It may be hard to believe, but after activating the override, all of the dormant Geth on the ship are reactivated by David in an attempt to attack. After blasting out of there, Shepard returns to the open area for the last time before having to head to Atlas Station to disable the Overlord program. I use this time to sweep the area and gather all the collectibles, enter the station and begin the final approach to Overlord. So, this area of the game is kind of controversial for certain ways that it describes David as a person and his condition. You see, David is now described as being autistic, somewhat of a savant in a lot of ways, and a mathematical genius with excellent understanding of computers and technology, hence he was the ideal candidate for Overlord. It's mostly in the way that Gavin describes his brother that makes this part feel a little icky, which I guess is maybe the point, but it feels a bit poorly worded in some ways. Listening to Gavin's audio logs all just feel a little bit dehumanizing of David, and while I feel confident saying that BioWare wasn't making some sort of political statement about autism through this DLC by declaring them to be all unthinking machines, it's no surprise that the whole thing rubs some people the wrong way. Regardless of all that, we solve a pretty bothersome puzzle to summon the elevator to our location, to which we are rewarded by fighting yet more Geth. On the elevator we begin plummeting to certain doom and traverse this Dead Space-esque horror show of a facility to arrive at a console that David uses to interface with Shepard's mechanical parts, showcasing the true nature of the events of this place and asking for her to stop. After digesting all of the information from David, it seems evident that he is quite frankly miserable in the state of affairs forced onto him by his brother and the other scientists, that he just wanted to happily study the Geth and mathematics and enjoy life. So after Shepard's intense fight to stop David from uploading himself to the extranet, and listening to his pleas for freedom, the program is weakened enough to the point that David is fully revealed, strapped up to a horrifying looking machine. Gavin enters to try and debate and justify his actions to Shepard. After explaining that this is obviously one of the most inhumane things that Gavin could have possibly done in his experiments, we go to rescue David and get him off this rock. After having tried to shoot at Shepard, Gavin is thoroughly reprimanded and told that David is coming with her, regardless of Gavin or the Elusive Man's thoughts on her actions. We choose to save David, shut down the Overlord project and have him sent to a facility designed to help the brilliant minds of the galaxy and keep them in a safe environment encouraging independent study and ethical research of biotics, technology, and science. The facility is named Grissom Academy, and while the Elusive Man suggests that he's happy to see David sent there, his message definitely has some undertones of disapproval of the decision. Good. Not sure I particularly want to make him happy anyway. And that's the end of the Overlord DLC. It's got a lot more meat on its bones than that of Firewalker, but it is still effectively a little offshoot side story with no overall bearing to the plot of the games. A bit of world building, showcasing some more Cerberus atrocities, and of course, some combat and gameplay variety that make the DLC a short but pretty enjoyable time. I'm not going to go out of my way to describe this as the best DLC for the game, but it is pretty good. And probably the best of the bunch that doesn't give you a new or temporary companion to play with. Speaking of which...
Shepard, it's good to see you again.
Back when we first visited Ilium to do a few different objectives, helping out Miranda, recruiting Thane and Samara and such, we had a run-in with our old friend who helped us in our fight against Saren, as well as in our hunt for her indoctrinated mother. I am of course talking about our old friend, Dr. Liara Tassoni, who, last we saw, was involved in investigating something to do with the Shadow Broker, a mysterious information tradesman who nobody really knows anything about. At the time, Shepard and Liara had their own business to attend to, and as such were unable to collaborate on anything at the time. However, she did extend the offer to help her continue her hunt, which is the result of the Lair of the Shadow Broker paid DLC pack included in the Legendary Edition of the game. This is probably the most substantial of the DLC for Mass Effect 2, as upon speaking to Liara and beginning it, we're immediately treated to the revelation of Liara's ongoing hunt for the Shadow Broker. On our last meeting, her assistant had betrayed her and was defeated, but now some Cerberus given data on the Shadow Broker will finally give Liara and Shepard the upper hand in their investigation. Some hints to his location and information that an old friend of Liara, a Drell named Ferren, is still alive unbeknownst to Liara, who reveals that she was in fact the one who rescued Shepard's body after her death using information provided by Cerberus. She gave Shepard's body to Cerberus knowing their claims of being able to bring Shepard back are very likely to be real, and now she intends to use Cerberus's data once again to try and find the Shadow Broker and rescue Ferren. We swing by Liara's flat with Garrus and Tali, truly getting the gang back together, and find the area sealed off by local law enforcement. We're allowed into the apartment by the Spectre heading this investigation, who reveals that Liara was attacked in a suspected assassination attempt, but she didn't flee until several minutes later. Based on the lack of blood, she's likely alive and well, clearly working on something important, and the Spectre aids Shepard in investigating the flat for any clues to Liara's whereabouts. Among the mementos and knickknacks, a photo of the Normandy is noted as changing to a picture of a Prothean dig site once Shepard touches it, detecting her DNA. This points to Liara's clue being related to Prothean artifacts, and, sure enough, a disc is located in one that showcases a call between Liara and a Solarian who was able to use the Cerberus data to locate the approximate area of the Shadow Broker, with whom she had arranged a meeting. Shepard, Garrus, Tali and their new Asari friend head off to Liara's designated meeting spot, which... oh no. The Spectre leaves to investigate further ahead while Shepard and her squad make their way up the building searching for survivors and for any sign of Liara, making sure to console and help just about everyone that can be helped on the way up. The squad ascend the building carefully, making note of the bullet wounds indicating a terror attack prior to the explosion. With evidence of Liara's whereabouts, agents of the Shadow Broker arrive and begin attacking Shepard. After putting out both literal and metaphorical fires, she comes face to face with Liara's informant, or at least what's left of him. Liara emerges from the shadows, aiming a gun at our Spectre friend and revealing that she is in fact the assassin who would attempt to take Liara out at her apartment, and likely ordered the attack on this building. To top it off, she gives Liara a nice racist insult before attempting to flee, but Shepard and Liara give chase. After taking out even more of the Shadow Broker's goons, we catch up to Liara attempting to commandeer a car to pursue our target. Shepard takes the wheel and the gang zoom off into the sky to follow her through the busy sky streets. I actually forgot that this DLC had a driving segment. It doesn't really let you go up or down, just forwards I think, and I think the controls are more or less the same as the ones for the Hammerhead. It's a very, very short segment, and it's entirely focused on chasing her and avoiding the mines and reinforcements she uses against us. It feels like a proper cinematic car chase, and I do appreciate the abruptness of it, as well as the little dialogue snippets between Shepard and Liara. It's more of an action set piece that makes it feel nice to have Liara back on board, and after catching the Spectre, Shepard rams her car off course and into a skyrise hotel. Touching down on the other side, we pursue on foot and take out even more reinforcements she's been able to muster. She has sent a lot of resources to try and take Liara down, and while the patrons of this establishment seem to be safe, as sleazy as the location is, she has put them at considerable risk. Fortunately, her reign of chaos comes to an end when Shepard catches her hobbling away through the middle of a party. She quickly grabs a hostage, trying to gain the upper hand in all this, threatening us. Shepard's quick wits and bluffing about the lives that her actions have indirectly caused to be lost, the human soldiers sacrificed to save the Destiny Ascension for example, get the Spectre to stumble just enough to lose focus of the fact that Liara is literally throwing a table at her head, WWE style. After a pretty long boss fight with her zipping all over the place and being generally annoying, she lays defeated and bleeding out on the balcony. She tries to justify working with the Shadow Broker to Shepard, sacrificing morals for the sake of convenient access to information, but it is abundantly clear that she's in the wrong in all this. In spite of that, she does make good points about the ruthlessness of Cerberus before she passes. With the Rogue Spectre issue out of the way and the information from Liara's contact safely in our hands, Shepard and Liara devise a plan to take out the Shadow Broker and find Farron. Liara laments the feeling of having to rely on Shepard for help, feeling dependent on her, but after a series of Paragon interruptions, Shepard is able to try and evoke that feeling of the old Liara back, to get her to showcase her caring side once again, no matter how cold-hearted she may portray herself as being an information broker. The two are able to have a real conversation briefly in the midst of all this, but Liara makes it clear that she can't stop until she finds Farron, and so she needs to go to the Shadow Broker's base and take him down. Let's back up a bit and briefly clarify why exactly the Shadow Broker is such a big problem, and state that while Shepard was dead, Liara was not the only one looking for her body. The Shadow Broker was also attempting to retrieve it, having been paid big money from the collectors to sell it to them. Since Liara and Cerberus were able to outplay the Broker, but Farron got captured along the way, it's understandable why this is so important to her, and so we set off immediately for the Shadow Broker's base to get him out of there. The Shadow Broker's base is a gigantic ship orbiting the planet Hagalaz. Despite the impressive size, the location is so discreet and near such a dangerous planet that it keeps it hidden from plain sight. It also means that staying on the outside of the ship for too long is dangerous, so Liara expresses that speed is of the essence. The gang make their way across the ship fighting yet more of the Shadow Broker's soldiers, and humorously commenting on the nature of the wave-based attacking structure that they, and indeed many enemies in these games, seem to abide by. After an adequate display of violence, Liara is able to open a hatch leading to the interior of the base, and we drop in uninvited. Cool helmet there, Thane. More resistance from the Shadow Broker's guards isn't enough to deter Shepard or Liara, thankfully, and their raid continues down several corridors, until finding Farron strapped to a chair in what seems to be some sort of interrogation room. The Drell is weak, and any attempt at rescue electrocutes him, with the only way to rescue him without being electrocuted being to cut the power from the Shadow Broker's personal controls. As such, it seems that our next destination is clear. It's time to fight the Shadow Broker who, according to Farron, is bigger than a Krogan. And bigger he is, as once we finally meet face to face with the big lad himself, it is revealed that he's in fact about 12 feet tall or so. We all have a good reason to be upset with his actions. His alliance with the Collectors, kidnapping of Farron and bombing of Ilium are all perfectly good reasons to take him down. His threats to Liara and Thane is just icing on the cake to encourage taking this chap down. Fortunately, I don't have to do too much explaining on who this guy is, as Liara does it for me.
You're a Yogg, a pre-spaceflight species quarantined to their homeworld from massacring the Council's first contact teams. This base is older than your planet's discovery, which probably means you killed the original Shadow Broker 60 years ago, then took over. I'm guessing you were taken from your world by a trophy hunter who wanted a slave. Or a pet. How am I doing?
Thanks, Liara. The Yogg is greatly angered by her assessment and decides to throw a table at her, since apparently that's the signature move of this DLC. The Broker's shield is powerful, completely resilient to projectile attacks. Since he wants to throw tables like some kind of wrestler, it seems only fitting that Shepard give him a few smacks to the face to make the fight even more visceral and crazy. Liara advises us to get him to bring up the shield one more time, almost like some sort of three-phase boss fight, which is a crazy unique concept, I know, allowing her a window of opportunity to bring the ceiling toppling down on the Broker, coating him in the electromagnetic energy stored within. After he goes pop and the three heroes are able to catch their breath, the power is shut off and Farron is released from his bindings. All of the Shadow Broker's agents report in, inquiring about the power outage that had just happened, and, in this moment, Liara makes the decision to respond, referring to herself as the Shadow Broker, taking the moniker for herself and becoming the premier source of information trade in the galaxy. Her explanation for this decision is sound. She can utilize the Broker's connections and resources to aid the fight against the Reapers, and with everything said and done, her emotions get the best of her. Shepard holds her friend close once again as Liara bursts into tears. Once she calms down, she showcases just how potentially useful all of this information could be and welcomes Shepard's company forevermore, before the two part ways once again. With that, the main bulk of the DLC is actually already over, but it does allow for the player to revisit the Shadow Broker's base at any time and review the dossiers that the Broker had gathered on Shepard's crew, which is full of fun and wonderful Easter eggs such as Legion being a gamer, several investment opportunities to earn some rewards for a small sum of cash, and some special research options and the ability to respec your squad. Being able to spend some time with Liara, as brief as it was, and revisit her at any time to see how she is settling into her new life that is such a large departure from her portrayal in the first game makes this whole DLC a very interesting ride that adds a whole lot of intrigue to the story as a whole. I think it's one of the most fitting pieces of DLC, as it feels like a major plotline, while also clearly being a separate thing entirely from the main story. It ties in really well and has a lot of plot relevance, but is ultimately superfluous to the whole thing, and not playing it wouldn't affect the plot of the game that much, hence why I did it after the main game. It also does a pretty solid job of setting things up for Mass Effect 3. The Yarg and their small role in the galaxy, Liara's new much bigger role in the galaxy and the politics, for her new little drone friend, the Shadow Broker's research suggesting new leads on potential Prothean survival methods, and generally getting to hear Liara's thoughts on everything that happened in this game and catch up a little bit, including continuing her romance if you had established it previously. Make all of this just a very satisfying and engaging piece of DLC for the game. Before they part ways, Liara gives Shepard a present for her quarters, congratulates her on her relationship with Thane, and the two express their hopes for the future of the galaxy against the Reapers. Well, speaking of the Reapers, it should come as no surprise that they're going to end up as the main antagonist of the third game. Everything that has been done so far has been done in the name of stopping their incoming reign of terror on the galaxy, and to delay the cycle. But the cycle is upon us, and in the final piece of downloadable content for Mass Effect 2, titled Arrival, Shepard is tasked with following up on a lead given by our old Alliance CEO and typical side quest giver from the first game, Admiral Hackett, with the task of rescuing a missing person who has information on the Reaper's imminent arrival. One slight complication is that the location Shepard is sent to is in Batarian space, which complicates things muchly due to the tensions between humanity and the Batarians. Worse still, Hackett believes that the woman we are searching for, Amanda Kenson, was arrested on terrorism charges, meaning Shepard is sent in on a solo stealth mission to break her out of prison. Clambering through the underpassages and back halls of the prison, taking out some Varren, disabling some lasers and security systems, and overhearing some Batarians talking about Amanda's plans, we manage to safely make our way undetected to where she is being held. Along the way, we find that she may have genuinely orchestrated an attempt to destroy the mass relay in this system, which would have catastrophic effects, no doubt. But there's no time to talk about it, and as such, an escape is sought out immediately. It's a relatively long combat sequence involved, holding off various areas and what is essentially a large-scale shooting gallery, where you have to protect Amanda from taking too much gunfire. It's not hard per se, but it goes on for a while before allowing progression through the facility and to a shuttle for our daring escape. On board, Shepard and Amanda finally have a chance to chat about what's going on, where she explains that she is still very much intending to destroy the relay, because it seems that the Reapers are on their way, and this star system is their arrival point. As such, destroying the relay would cause a significant delay and grant prep time for the Citadel and the Alliance that otherwise wouldn't be available. Their previous attempt involved using an asteroid to crash into it, which is pretty ironic considering our run-in with Batarians last time, but as we know, she was caught red-handed. She also states, however, that the destruction of the relay would no doubt destroy every planet in the system and the Batarians there within, which is not great news if I may be frank. She offers to show us some proof once we arrive at her base of operations, seeing an artifact that will supposedly give undeniable evidence of the Reaper's impending arrival to this location. As such, she lands us down on the asteroid and we follow her into her base, where she showcases a 2-day-long countdown that suggests that the imminent arrival of the Reapers. Hilariously, if you wait for 2 real-life days at this point, the DLC ends with a bad ending cutscene, but we instead are going to follow her directions and see the evidence of this countdown's legitimacy. At this point, it's apparent that one issue faces the logistics of realistically evacuating an entire Batarian colony within 48 hours, so there should in theory be a lot of moral quandaries to think about for this DLC. That would be the case if it weren't for the fact that the Reaper artifact is sat out in the open and readily available for anyone to interact with, and as it shows Shepard the vision of the Reaper's arrival, Amanda showcases the twist that she is indoctrinated, locking Shepard up to stop her from starting the asteroid's engines back up and destroying the relay to delay the Reapers. Despite managing to kill absolutely everyone trying their hardest to stop me, Shepard is knocked unconscious by the Reaper artifact regardless, and subsequently locked up by Amanda, who states that the Reapers, presumably Harbinger, want Shepard alive. Upon awakening, the doors are for some reason unlocked, and Shepard is able to knock the security guards out and reactivate some of the station's mechs from a nearby console, in addition to hearing some of Amanda's logs detailing her indoctrination. The game briefly has you play as a mech, which is kinda neat, and Shepard uses the chaos to destroy the power conduit, keeping her locked up and escape the facility. The Reaper countdown has just surpassed 2 hours remaining, and so after gunning the way past the rest of the guards and reaching the control terminal for the asteroid, Shepard starts it up and gets the collision with the relay underway. She attempts to send an alert to the colonists living in the system, but her message is interrupted by Amanda, who announces her plans to destroy the reactor powering this station. So, after making her way down there, Shepard has her backed into a corner with nowhere to run. Amanda decides to blow herself up, knocking Shepard unconscious once again, and she wakes up with very little time left. She quickly rushes off to an escape shuttle past yet more guards, and opens the external communication channel to try and contact the Normandy. It is now that Harbinger reveals himself. The Reapers are clearly fed up with our meddling, furious at Shepard's resilience to the Reapers' impending plans for their precious cycle. Harbinger sends us a thread, telling humanity to prepare for the arrival. Just in time, the Normandy shows up and gets Shepard off of this rock, flying her through the relay with only seconds to spare before the asteroid hits. She was unable to effectively warn the colonists, and almost every Batarian in the system is killed in the resulting explosion. We have our first ever face-to-face meeting with Hackett, who praises Shepard for her efforts in stopping the Reapers. At the same time, he expresses regret at the way the mission went regarding the destruction of the relay and the deaths of the colonists. With the asteroid gone, the artifact was destroyed, and so there is no proof that this relay's destruction was involved with the Reapers in any way, especially considering the Council's general denial of their existence. Subsequently, the Batarians are also all vying for punishment for humanity. As such, Hackett gives Shepard the unfortunate news that, despite her valiant work overall, she's going to have to go to Earth and face trial for her actions. Likely this would involve some form of sentencing, and while the Alliance will do what it can to prepare for the Reaper invasion, Shepard will likely be incarcerated when they do finally arrive. He thanks us once more and makes his leave, marking the end of every piece of content in Mass Effect 2. I left this one to the end simply due to the nature of its story. More so than any other, it ties into the overarching plot of the trilogy revolving around the Reapers by actively featuring the imminent arrival of the main antagonists, and the first conversation between our protagonist Shepard and our antagonist Harbinger, the head honcho of the Reapers. But yeah, I don't know if my tone of voice was any different here, and so I don't know how effectively I masked my unenthusiastic attitude towards this DLC. On paper, the idea of the main purpose of the plot properly gearing us up and preparing us for all the stakes that the opening of Mass Effect 3 will follow up on, the Reaper's arrival, Shepard standing trial on Earth, the disbanding of the Normandy SR2's crew as a result, and, to a lesser extent, the growing disdain between humanity and the Batarians. Setting all of this up? Great. It feels maybe a little bit like an advertisement for Mass Effect 3, but as far as I'm concerned it serves its purpose as a perfect segue to finish at the end of Mass Effect 2 and make you excited to see the conclusion of the trilogy. But at the same time, what exactly was the plot of this DLC again? We go to a Batarian colony, rescue a prisoner who takes us to an asteroid she plans to use to stop the Reaper's arrival, we're then knocked out after finding out she's actually indoctrinated and no longer plans to use the asteroid, and we then fight back and reactivate the asteroid, all the while being incapable of ever informing the colonists of the impending doom that's about to be unleashed. I feel like the idea of a good moral issue is there, something to really make you go, but I don't think it really sticks the landing on account of being a bit convoluted and feeling a bit cheap and forced. It's hard to fully explain, and the point of these videos is to be positive and spread my love for video games, so I don't want to be too overly negative, especially towards the end of a video, to end it on a sour note, but I don't know, I wish the setup for this decision was a bit better and or gave me a sense that there was a grey decision to be made, since no matter what choices I as the player made, the Batarian colony was always getting destroyed. I feel like it would have been more effective had there been a renegade option that allowed you to save them, but that's just my thoughts on the whole thing. I do still contend that the idea of this DLC is great, and it undeniably gets you pumped to see the thrilling conclusion of the trilogy, as it perfectly sets up the Reaper invasion that takes centre stage in the third game. It's a slightly sour note ending to an otherwise fantastic game, but fortunately I'm pretty sure that this will be the last time that this series ever has an issue regarding a lackluster ending. So it's all okay, right? Right? And with that, we can officially say 2 down and 1 to go. At one point I might have described Mass Effect 2 as my favourite in the trilogy, my general logic being that the story of the first game is probably my favourite, but the gameplay in the third is definitely my favourite. Mass Effect 2 isn't particularly my favourite in neither category, for the most part. The story is just going around collecting friends and helping them with their problems, while fighting a secondary antagonist that is basically there to hype you up for the real bad guys coming next time, and the gameplay, while a huge step up from the first game, is still pretty bare bones compared to how far they're able to push it in just the 2 and a bit years in Mass Effect 3. As such, it's kinda like I said, I once considered Mass Effect 2 to be my favourite due to it being more or less a perfect blend of good story and good gameplay, while not being the most outstanding in either field. It's perhaps the most consistent Mass Effect, and unless general consensus has changed, then I think it's safe to say that that consistency is what leads this to be the overall fan favourite one. But you may have noticed my careful wording. I once considered Mass Effect 2 to be my favourite. I thought of it this way prior to the release of the Legendary Edition. I think the remaster of the first game for a lot of people made it jump up the ranks and become their favourite thanks to the gameplay improvements. Not me though. I'm going to take the controversial stance and say that my favourite game in the Mass Effect trilogy is Mass Effect 3. It's a hard position to take and many will disagree with me. Some may fear my message, but I am willing to hold the line and defend my opinion, which I will be doing next time.